Brother, 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 there's one thing of you that you know to bring some love in the day. Yeah. We don't need to yesterday. See, war's not the answer. Only love can come ahead. You know we got to find a way to bring some love in the day. You get that and pick it side. Punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see what's going on. What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? Oh, what's going on?
And so we are gonna just jump in, Ed Riley. So this is another weekend of All Politics of Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. This is Friday, January 15th, or maybe week 2 after the White Riot of 2021.
Oh, you still calling it the White Riot? Okay.
The White Riot, or we could talk it. Or we could call it the Trailer Trash Rebellion.
Okay.
I mean, we could, right? We could be like the Trailer Trash Rebellion of 2021.
Whatever name works for you. But John, let's get him the update first. I mean, the rundown, what the show is going to be. What's going to be up first, second, third, all that.
All right, cool. So we're going to have a good show tonight. We're starting off with the Mayor's Forum. The Mayor's Forum every third Friday. We hear from Mayor Ras Baraka, and he breaks down all sorts of cool things that are happening within the city. And often we get into these really great conversations where he talks about his philosophy. I enjoy these conversations, and we are always glad to have them on the show. We're at 7 o'clock. We're going to be joined by the Newark superintendent of Newark Public Schools, Roger Leon. Roger Leon is been a superintendent in a very, 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 very interesting year. You have the elections, you have COVID, you have all of these things going on in education, and we're going to have a very good conversation with him tonight.
And what are we talking about with Roger Leon?
Oh yeah, education in the day of COVID. What education in 2021 is going to be like? What is it going to look like? Right? I think that these are things that are very, very timely. Right? I think the announcement was just made that we're not even going back to school in person. It was supposed to be in January, but because of all the things that are going on with COVID, we're not going to be going back to school for a little bit. It's going to be like third cycle, which is probably closer to April now, where it is where it's scheduled. So those are the first 2 hours. And then we have Dr. Earl Henderson, who's going to be on the 8 o'clock hour. And Dr. Earl Henderson will be on with Dr. Kelly Harris.
Oh, okay.
And so that's going to be a great conversation.
I didn't know Brother Harris was going to be on, man. We didn't even add him in the press release. When did that happen?
Oh, he's the one who set it up. And that is just a communication, because actually Dr. Kelly Harris is the one who set up the interview to begin with Dr. Earl Henderson. It's gonna be a great conversation, right? Dr. Earl Henderson he has been doing a lot on political theory and on Black people, and some people are like, why do we need theory, right? And he's gonna have a really good conversation about theory, Black power, and our movements and how they deal with what's going on now. His expertise is in international relations, and it's a great offering of that too, right? Like as a debate coach, I always love these conversations we have with the professors because it always leads me into thinking about things that our kids are going to run at any given time. So I think all of those are going to be great conversations. We're trying to think of something really good to do because this is Dr. Martin Luther King weekend, and we think that these are going to be some really good conversations we're going to have.
Okay.
So, yep. So,
and by the way, what is Dr. Henderson's book? He has a book out, right?
Yes, he does have a book out.
Power or something like that.
The revolution will not be theorized.
I like that, man.
The revolution will not be theorized. Cultural revolution in the Black Power era, right? So he has so it's going to be an incredible conversation that we're going to have tonight with Dr. Harris and Dr. Earl Henderson. So the rundown is good, and now we have the mayor is here, and we can begin the first part, the Mayor's Forum. Welcome, Mayor. Welcome, Mayor Baraka. We're very, very glad, as always, to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Peace, man.
Peace. What's going on, Zahid? What's happening?
I think Zahid is muted.
I am. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All the way. Yeah, right. Let's go to work.
So peace, man. Rhino, I'm sorry, brother. I don't know if you want to say something to the mayor.
I just want to say peace. Peace.
Okay.
Peace, brother.
That's it.
All right.
All right.
So Mayor, before we get really down in black in this conversation, man, want to just see if we can get an update on COVID-19, the vaccine rollout in the city.
Yeah. So what's happening now is that we're getting ready to February the 1st expand to moving around from ward to ward, at least 2 days in each ward, some simultaneously, maybe like the east and the north together, or east and the south, or the north and the west. 2 days a week, we're going to be moving around. That besides the health department will be doing 2 sites, and then the county has their sites. One at Essex County College, the other at Donald Payne Voltet, and then the other one throughout the county that Newark residents can go to. So that'll basically be it. I understand that Biden is going to release all of the vaccines after inauguration, and he's pushing for a $1.9 trillion kind of recover America COVID-19 plan that includes consistent stimulus checks as well as more testing and vaccinations. So we'll see what that looks like.
And there's stimulus checks in that too, right?
Huh?
Yeah, there's going to be stimulus checks.
Right, stimulus checks. Yep. So continuous stimulus check. The mayors for guaranteed income sent him and Vice President Harris a letter urging them to continue the stimulus checks in perpetuity. So hopefully they take heed to that, and they want to do it, but obviously they're going to need congressional approval for that. The Democrats do have control of both of the House and the Senate, so it is easier than it was before to get a lot of things done. Hopefully, the Senate is locked, tied. The Vice President is the tiebreaker now, so we'll see what happens in terms of policy and all the other kind of things that we've been asking for. We'll see what happens now that after January 20th. But people still have to look over their shoulder because you still got this crazy person and all this stuff going on. I hope people don't believe that that's the last that we're going to hear of this, because I don't believe that by a long start. That's not going to happen. These people are going to still be involved and creating all kinds of issues. So we got to be prepared for that.
So what you talking about is the Capitol takeover, which John Austin refers to as the White Riot. The
White Riot of 2021.
Well, I think is a little bit, white folks have been rioting for a long time, so.
That's why we had to give it the year, right? Yeah. The 2021, or the trailer trash rebellion. We can call it that. I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I think it's like, you got 70 million Americans, plus you got this kind of right wing. You understand that, Hitler tried to have an insurrection. He lost that insurrection, came back, and was a political figure outside, was a larger political figure outside of office when he lost. So it actually served him, and he was able to galvanize these people around these ideas of supremacy and this kind of narcissism that he represented. And I think this guy Trump represents similar kind of ideas. And it's interesting. It's a lot of black people, like you argue with black people online, who are talking about, they support Trump, but they don't support that, which is ridiculous. I mean, these people are walking through the Capitol with Confederate flags.
Right.
This is a full-on representation of the attack on Fort Sumter, and I think we have to take that seriously, right?
Very serious.
These people, in 1861, attacked Fort Sumter, and was the beginning of the Civil War. And there were things that were going on before that. Obviously, Kansas-Nebraska Act, Missouri Compromise, a lot of things that led up to that. But they got the courage to have armed rebellion. And this is something that happened with the complicity of the Capitol Police. And now it's coming out, some congressional members helped as well.
Did reconnaissance for.
That's right. There's talk of one congressional member tweeting Nancy Pelosi's whereabouts when those people were coming into the building. So this is a little deeper than just these people getting angry and rushing into the Capitol. This is, the FBI is now saying that they have evidence that these people, some of them had intended to kidnap and even assassinate some of the congressional delegation. I mean, could you imagine if they would have caught Ilhan Omar or AOC? Just in a wild frenzy in the hallway, could have turned ugly. Just out of the spur of the moment, even if it wasn't planned, just some wild kind of activity. They got seriously hurt, even killed out there. I honestly believe that. I mean, these people were bold enough to attack police officers, steal items out of the congressional offices, rub feces on the wall, destroy John Lewis Memorial inside. These people were, and some of them were police officers, firemen, army, folks from the military. So some of these people were trained, and white America can afford at some point. They can't even afford. I mean, they afford to overlook this. We can't, right?
And there were bombs. There were actual bombs that were there. And I agree, and I totally agree with what you're saying in terms of. I really do think we were within 30 seconds, right? Like, because remember that door was open, and had they gone in that way where all the senators were, right, that would have been a problem. We were like 30 seconds and one door away from having multiple members of Congress killed, from us being thrown into a constitutional crisis that, and maybe that's what he wanted, right? To declare martial law as president because one branch of government just got decapitated, just got taken out or taken out for a while, right? Like I don't think that many people fully get how dangerous what happened was.
Yeah, and we that's why we have to tell it to them so they understand it. And the real narrative is that if Black people would not have come out to vote the way they did, we would be in the hand of the Confederate Army, right? And that's what I'm calling these people. So at the end of the day, if Atlanta and the suburbs of Atlanta didn't show up, if Philadelphia didn't show up, if Las Vegas and Nevada didn't show up, if all those places didn't show up, particularly places like that where we'd be in trouble. People owe Stacey Abrams, their lives. I mean, the Democratic Party owes Stacey Abrams a great deal, by the way. Just single-handedly organizing things that she's done in Georgia is an incredible feat on its own. But people come out and vote their interests, and so we came out in droves and made sure that this guy lost. And the real message in all of that is that the irony is we fighting for democracy more than these people are. Number one.
Right.
Preserve this country more than
always been the soul of this country.
And it's clear to me that that's what's going on. And if we didn't come out, we'd be in dire. Could you imagine the second term of this maniac who
No.
not be restricted by anything? He did not care. It's not about re-election. He would do whatever he wanted to do on the way out of that door, short of somebody dragging him out of that office. I mean, that's exactly what would have happened. And in exile, he'll probably try to do similar things, or at least say some things that would incite people to do all kinds of stuff. Absolutely.
Well, that's if he's not locked up. That's if he doesn't go to jail, man.
It doesn't matter. Eugene Debs ran for president of the United States from federal prison.
Who was that?
Eugene
Steve
Debs.
Jobs is a great
Okay.
socialist from about 100 years ago.
Well, that's why they're hoping to convict him in Congress so that they can prevent him from ever running for political office again.
Yeah.
You know.
And I don't think that that's going to restrain him, though. You know, I mean, I think that, you know, it makes him a martyr. And these people are going to, I don't think he should be in office, but I don't think that's the end of it. You know, I think that he's going to continue, or he can continue, even on these fringe radio stations or these crazy internet things that like Parler and all these places that are crazy. He's going to continue to put this message out. And these people are prepared to come to his aid and assistance, millions of them,
Right.
in fact. You know, we can't pretend that we don't know the history of this place and what these people are capable of.
Right.
So we have to be prepared and on alert. You know, I mean, these folks have every state in America at this point on inauguration day on alert.
Right.
Every state is on alert right now, leading up to inauguration day. Right now,
Right.
our assembly people and state senators are on alert. They're telling people to have their staff work from home, all kind of stuff, because of what these people have done and what is unfolding to be larger than people anticipated is happening right now. And as we go about our daily business, these people are plotting and planning. And there's somebody that knows exactly what's going on. They knew.
Right.
They didn't do none of this in private, by the way. This was all public.
Right.
Everybody knew they were going to D.C. They said they were going to storm the Capitol.
Right.
They said all of these things, and
Publicly.
nobody prevented it.
So you know, man, I want to go back to something you said, and you know, because I heard this. I think it might have been this morning. It might have been yesterday morning. I heard this guy Steve Smith. Steve Smith.
Steve
Yeah.
Schmidt.
From the Lincoln Project, right?
Right. He was a Republican under McCain.
Yeah. So, man, he said this, man. He said everybody is running away from the real conversation. He said the real conversation was that Donald Trump was trying to disenfranchise black people, right? And that he couldn't find any of his white cronies and henchmen who were secretaries of state around the country in those states you just mentioned, right? In those cities, like, you know, you talking about Georgia, Atlanta, and you know, and around the country. He said the real truth is that because they would not disenfranchise black people, he couldn't understand. He couldn't understand. Donald Trump couldn't understand why they wouldn't allow him to take votes from black people, and that's what this. And so all of those people that are supporting them, these, you know, creating this insurrection and all of that. What Steve was saying was that there needs to be a real conversation, because he's saying, and Steve and Joe Starsborough said this too. He said because in the next 2 years, these people are hunkering down trying to figure out how can they stop black people from voting, because Stacey Abrams, who you just mentioned, did such a great job of organizing people in Georgia and stealing the seat from Mitch McConnell and giving it back to the Democrats. They are focusing in on the next 2 years. How can they disenfranchise black people, right? Because black people were able to vote from home, right, by doing mail-in ballots, and that all that they had put in didn't work. They even tried to do it with Donald Trump putting in a new head of the post office, and they couldn't get it done there because everybody was watching. So Steve said that there needs to be a real conversation in the black community, amongst black people, amongst black leaders, about how do they prevent white people in the next 2 years from taking back those states that went blue, and then preventing them from stealing the black vote.
Well, yeah, that's why ultimately political power locally is important, and they couldn't find anybody because and a lot of these municipalities and counties where we have some modicum of power because we're voting in authority, and also, you know, outside of just black and white folks, these people are interested in preserving the system more than anything, right? And that's important here. They would do that at the expense of any and everything, right? So there are people. So there's some folks who stormed the Capitol, and there are Republicans and other folks who are supporting them because they're willing to forego the system for their individual needs, desires, their racism, their white supremacy. There's some folks who are not interested in doing that, right? Because once you start doing a little bit of that, then it begins to tear the whole thing apart. They understand that's not what they want. They're not ready to go that far, right? They're not ready to do that. And so they believe that preserving just like Lincoln's thought, that preserving the Union is more important than maintaining slavery, right? And so it's important for them to believe in their mind that they have to preserve democracy as it is, as whatever the relationship it exists with us and everybody else. They would rather preserve that than have it upended. And that's a discussion that is going on in those circles, right? Because ultimately, once you start that, once you allow Trump to peel back this election the way he was trying to do like that, then all bets are off. There's no way. There's complete destabilization, and there are people who understand that. You know, there's total and complete destabilization all over the place, right? And this whole idea that there's a kind of clear transfer of power, a peaceful transference of power, and that's what the United States prides itself on, this kind of peaceful transfer of power. In their mind, that is the hallmark of the democratic institutions in this country, because there's a peaceful transition of power. That right there flies in the face of what Trump and them are doing, flies in the face of that notion, and it kind of sends messages all over the world to how contentious it is in this country, right? And how, like, 30 seconds, as was said, and 2 doors away, we are from a real kind of a battle with Americans versus Americans on this soil.
And it was a black man who took him in the other direction.
Yeah.
Right. That the black police officer, the Capitol police officer, who looked down the hall and saw that the door was open, and pushed the guy back so he couldn't look down that hall, and then let him in the other direction.
Yeah, I mean, we're all over history like that, though, brother. So at the end of the day, there was somebody in there that wanted to do their job, and and we hats off to the brother. But at the end of the day, there are folks that it's the system itself that these people that they want to preserve. So the reason they were even in there is because they were counting electoral votes.
Right.
Right.
That's the reason
They were trying to stop that.
Right. They were trying to stop. The act of stopping that is treasonous, by the way.
Right.
So at the end of the day, they were counting electoral votes, and I'm opposed to them even being there counting electoral votes, right? So the discussion is never going to be about that, because there are folks who want to preserve that, and getting rid of Trump and them to preserve this system the way it is something that these folks are willing to embrace. But ultimately, we should be talking about why are we even going through all of this when the man already won by 9 million votes? Like what the election was in November, right? We're here in January with this nonsense.
And a lot of it is and maybe you can speak to this, and that is the way in which we know information. I'm actually, I'm a debate coach, and one of the things that I'm dealing with right now with my younger students is we're having conversations about epistemology. How do you know what you know? Where do you get your news from? How do you know it's true? How do you deal with it? Right? And I think that like just asking those questions and educating the general public in how do we establish knowledge is probably going to be one of the most important things we do over the next few years. And it's not just in the election. Like people are debating about whether or not Trump won or not.
Right.
And we see this, and you talk about this all the time, and we see this now with COVID, people taking the vaccines. I think it really all comes together in that, like, there's so much information out there that nobody really knows what's real.
Right. And how do you get 9 million votes? So we wouldn't even be talking about this if it was one person, one vote.
Right.
This wouldn't even be a discussion. There's no time in history where electoral college helped black people. But for that matter. So at the end of the day, we shouldn't be engaged in this discussion with these people. They shouldn't have been down there. The race was over, months ago, that thing needs to be abolished. Period. Because it's almost ludicrous that these people are running around talking about how is a little bit of votes and the race would be over, it'd be different. 9 million more people voted for Biden than Trump. 9 million more people. Like, that's, to me, on its face, is ridiculous that we even have this discussion, but we are, because the system is not being challenged, right? We're going to, and these people have preserved that, and we'll be focusing on these crazy people, and we should be focusing on them, but we cannot forget, we should be on them, but we cannot forget the real focus, which is there's some systemic changes that need to happen in this country, not just these crazy white supremacists who are running around here, who are emboldened and feeling empowered because the president of the United States gave them a platform and a context to do some of the most vile and racist things that they've done over this last 4 years. And you're beginning to see more of them. When the FBI says that the greatest threat to the United States government, to this country, is white supremacist organizations, that these people are up to, are doing a thing all over this country. When the FBI says that, right?
And they've said it for years. Like, this ain't new. They've been saying that for the last 3-4 years, that the biggest terrorism threat, and they would go by the numbers. They're like, look at all the terrorist attacks that have happened since 9/11. Most of them have been from white supremacist groups.
Right. And those are the people that went inside of that Capitol, that are standing there, a guy dressed up like Chewbacca. You got all these crazy people in there, walking around with Confederate flags. How do you bring a Confederate flag into the Capitol and walk around, climb the thing and break the windows? All of those people, all of them, their intention was to destabilize the government. And people don't want to see it that way, because if you start talking about that, like here in the United States, it kind of reminds them of another country somewhere else that we talk about and judge about what's going on in other countries, how the government is destabilized, all these things. That's what happened here. It was an attempt to destabilize the government on that day. And in fact, because they stopped them from counting those votes and sent them into bunkers.
But you do that though, because you got, when you talk about the guy walking around with a Confederate flag inside the Capitol, you do that because you got inside help, right? You got elected officials, as you said, Mayor, who was, given that kind of information to some of those rioters. But here's the other thing, I heard that that the day before, according to some of the reports that are out there, that these folks were given reconnaissance visits, right? So they had people who were coming visiting the Capitol, allowing people to come in there, and some elected officials were saying, that they had never seen that before, where they were allowing groups to come in and walk around
Yeah. Well,
and be
especially
told
during
what people's
COVID, yeah.
offices were, and that's how they knew where they were going.
Yeah, absolutely. And somebody needs to be taken to task for that. Somebody needs to be held accountable. I'm telling you, if all of the marches and rallies that we done had down there, you know, and if you wouldn't even be able to get next to the Capitol,
Right.
then mine on the steps.
It's funny, like when it was going on, the very first thing I thought about was like, yo, and Ed and I were talking, we were like, this was an inside job. Like they're just getting they need to really do an investigate. Like as soon as they started walking in the Capitol, we'd be like, they really need to talk to the Capitol Police. Because there's some people in the Capitol Police like who are real betraying some other people in the Capitol Police. There were some people who were like, oh, okay. That, you know, they got turned on by people within their midst, and they cost some of them their lives, right? Cost some of them their health, like put them all at risk. I mean, I really don't think that most people fully understand the magnitude of having a branch of the United States federal government taken out by another branch of the United States government. The president of the United States tried to take out Congress.
Sure. I mean, that's a coup because he was an outgoing president.
Right.
And, you know, at the end of the day, we also have to see, how many, I mean, there were police officers, firemen from all over the country down there. There were some firemen from Newark down there.
From Newark?
Wow.
Sure. Absolutely.
Wow.
You know, and some of them are brown, you know, Latino. Some of them, it might be a few black people. I didn't see any, but you know, we just you have to understand, white supremacy is a mindset.
Right.
You have to understand that. Like, it's not really at this point in history. It ain't about the color of your skin, right? It is a mindset, right? Neo-colonialism is real. You colonize people's mind. I mean, Carter G. Woodson tapped on it in a simple sense, saying if it wasn't no back door, you'll create one. If it ain't one, so go through it.
Right.
That's the extent of a colonized mind. But white supremacy is a mindset. Like, so there's a video that I saw on Chuck D plays, a black person going F Black Lives Matter. Like, so you literally are saying F yourself.
Ooh.
Right? And was adamant about it out there with serious racists. On another page, on my friend Mike Song page, he's arguing with a guy who's telling him, you know, we should have kept Trump for 4 more years. You know, at least there was no war and this and that. I said, these people are completely confused. We're completely gone. Like the movement, education, information has left this place, right? These people are gone to argue with a person. These people would lynch you. You know, never mind. You go to their meetings and support what they're talking about. They are trying to organize to get rid of you. And so it is a mindset that we have to defeat. This mindset, we absolutely have to defeat it because it is rampant. And in these years, I mean, look at the rappers and the other kind of social kind of people who are out here coming out saying they support Trump. Some of them making joke about it. Some of them serious about it. That's dangerous.
Ooh.
They think this is a game. This is not a game. They think this stuff is a game. This is not a game at all. This is very serious stuff that's going on right now.
Let's think about that for a minute. What kind of mindset does it take from a black person who would go to a meeting with a group of people who could flip in a dime and turn around and literally kill you, right?
Yeah.
Because of their level of white supremacy, and believe that you know, and this is something you spoke to some years ago, man, on the forum when you talked about one of the things that these people are really afraid of is that, you know, the country is going to be browner, right? And
Sure.
that they see that happening. And so for them, you know, Dr. Welsing talked about this when she talked about, you know, this when she talked about white supremacy and racism, right? When you talk about, this level of fear that these people have, but how do you corrupt Black people who got a 400-year history in this country of what has been done to us, and that they would buy into that mindset?
Well,
Every brother ain't a brother.
a lot of those entertainers and those folks were taking a class stance. They're more interested in their taxes and the money they're making and all this stuff at the expense of everybody else. So they're taking a class stance. Clearly, their relationship to millionaires is different from your relationship to millionaires, right? So they're taking a strictly class position. Then there are people like, for example, even poor white folks have no business running around with Donald Trump in them. But like King said, you can't feed them food, so you feed them Jim Crow, right? And they diet on a meal of Jim Crow, which teaches them that you may not have anything, son, but you're better than them.
That's right.
So
That's right.
they grow up on a diet of Jim Crow, and you're talking about Black people who this level of self-hatred. When you have this mindset, this level of self-hatred, the hatred for your people, the hatred for the institutions, the community, all that stuff, almost you either embarrassed by it, right? Or could you think some sick way that everybody's holding you down because of the things they're doing, they're holding you down, or you agree, you're apolitical, ahistorical, have no information, or you're listening to all kind of crazy information, and you would rather believe the worst about yourself and your folks. In fact, you don't even associate yourself with them. Look at Clarence Thomas, right? His wife sponsored the buses for those people to go down there.
Right.
What?
Yes. Yes. She was rallying with the Confederate troops, the wife of Clarence Thomas.
Of a sitting Supreme Court justice.
Wow.
Yeah.
His wife paid for buses for them people to go down there. That's why I'm saying this thing is very, very serious, man.
Wow.
I mean, this man is United States Supreme Court justice, and his wife. If anything, he should be saying we can't be involved in that.
Right.
I mean, to this thing is at the highest levels of this. This is at the highest levels of this, and we still fighting just to get books in school. You know what I mean? So we have to accelerate quickly our ability to organize, educate, inform people in our community and beyond about what's happening, about how to get themselves ready and prepared, because this is a dangerous period we live in. It's very, very, very dangerous.
Very volatile.
And it becomes more dangerous because I honestly believe that the many white Americans do not see how dangerous it is, right? They're going to pigeonhole it or focus it on Trump and the actions that he's taken, but not the atmosphere and environment that made that possible. And all of the folks that were complicit in that, right? Who were willing to turn an eye to racism.
Right.
In order to benefit themselves individually, they thought, right? Who were willing to turn their eye to all of that and let it go. So the result of that is what we got. Logical result of that.
It's interesting, Mayor, because it seems like the argument that you're making right now is that because we have not dealt with anti-Blackness in the United States, because we have not dealt with the things that the protesters were talking about in terms of the things that lead to police violence, the things that lead to inequality in medicine and inequality in all of these other options and all these other outcomes, because we have not dealt with anti-Blackness in education and housing, we have this insurrection. Sure. It's like, are you equating the two? Are you equating America's not dealing with his history of racism with the white riot of 2021?
Absolutely. I mean, you'd have fed the American public that the country can't progress, that the problems that people have are because of Black and brown people and immigrants from Mexico and all this other kind of stuff. And you fed that to these people, a daily diet of it. and they figure that they're going to stop that because they want the country to progress, and so they're responding to the messages that they're getting from mainstream, and then they do something on it, and what they do is too ugly for these people to accept, and it goes at the very heart of the very system that they're purporting and upholding. So they have to push back against it. They have to push back against it. And as they push back against the system, and these people find out that we're willing to protect the system, well, we were just telling you this, we were going to protect the system. They get really upset and say, hey, wait a minute, we're going to tear the whole damn thing down. They went down there in their mind to tear the whole place up because somebody lied to them. They thought that they had allies all the way through. Said, we'll give you a nod and a wink, but you can't come up in here.
Right.
I'm saying, you can't come up in this house. Y'all can do that out there, but you can't bring that down here, brother. You know, that's like, I'm cool with y'all doing that in front of the house, but don't bring that on my steps.
Right.
Right. And because, you know, they benefited from it, but at the end of the day, like Malcolm said, those chickens came home to roost. So when they showed up in their house, now they upset about it. And it's like, if you see all these talk show hosts, they're going off, man. They cussing, they do all kinds of things because they did not expect what they saw. They did not expect what they saw at that level. They did not expect what they saw. I mean, sitting on Nancy Pelosi's desk in the Senate president's chair. I mean, the vice president was there of the United States.
The next three in succession was in that building. The next three in succession was in that building.
They was in there, and they were being protected by doorways and Secret Service. At the end of the day, them people would have breached that stuff and got to one of them. God knows what would have happened, and then we would have been having a whole entirely different discussion. And then for the FBI to get on Twitter and Facebook and all these things and say, we need help identifying these people.
Right.
You didn't need help identify Sundiata Acoli.
Don't get me started.
You didn't identify all the people that were involved in all this. And was put in some trumped up charges and all kinds of stuff. You didn't help identifying these people.
Right.
I mean, these people are not only are they in plain sight, they're on social media bragging about it.
I'm telling you.
They're on social media having conversations. The minute I seen the guy from New Jersey, I put him on my page immediately because they started looking for people. Look at this guy. He's telling you he was in there. He took a video of the girl who got shot. He told you he broke into the thing. Why is he still walking around? You look at him. There he is in broad daylight telling you that he breached the Capitol. Now they're starting to arrest people, but I want to see how this plays out.
I got to jump in. So you gave me my segue. All right.
I want to see how it plays out.
1968, the last civil rights bill in the country was called, of all things, the H. Rap Brown Act. And what did it say? It said that anyone going across state lines to incite riots or violence can be federally charged.
That's right.
Let's see how this is going to play out. That was, and where is so-called H. Rap Brown? Imam Jamil is in prison for the rest of his life, and we don't do something about that.
Right.
Right? So let's see how far our friends in law enforcement are going to take this threat that was graphically evident for the entire world to see. Instead of knocking on our doors, they knocked on a young black activist's door yesterday. He had him on their cell phone and blasted the whole thing out, asking him if he was planning to go down to D.C. A young black activist from this community, FBI and New Jersey State Police. Okay, they you know, I mean, please, the hypocrisy is so objectionable. It's crazy. But here's the thing I want to jump in on top of it. We mentioned Sundiata. Sundiata's birthday was yesterday. 84 years old. There's a whole new campaign that we're getting ready to launch to try and call for his release. But to our point here, the question that Ed asked a moment ago about the conversation that white folks are having that they want black folks to have, the country should have a conversation about direct democracy.
Right.
The country should have a discussion about why are we struggling with these repressive tendencies within government, where a Stacey Abrams has to get millions of dollars from a liberal Democrat, right, to then out organize and outvote folks, and there was still voter suppression that took place.
Still,
right? Why are we not talking about direct elections in this country? Why are we not talking about the abolition you alluded to, the abolition of the electoral college? Why do we still have that, right? Why are we not facilitating people being able to vote easily? It's a democracy.
easily.
This is the heartbeat of what you're supposed to be about. That's the question. Everybody need to have, why isolate? Why do we have to be isolated with the question of the day? Because white folks are still stuck on the stupidity and the sickness of white supremacy and privilege.
Yeah, see, they believe that if they allow all of this stuff to happen, they will be disempowering themselves, which is logical for them to believe. And so you got people, when they push these messages out, like I'm saying, people are eating this. You got kids growing up on a diet of this, right? And they believe some of the stuff that they're saying. You know, these messages that they put out, from movies to theater to TV to books to religious institutions, all this, the entire superstructure, putting these messages out and raising generations of children on white supremacy, both black and white.
And if we look at that crowd, that mob, using their language when they talk about us, right? These were not old people.
No.
These were middle-aged people and young people.
And they children.
Huh?
They went down there with their kids.
It was a family affair. They dealt with it just like they used to deal with lynching. It was a family thing. It was like, let's bring the family. Let's go down.
That's right.
See,
a family affair.
But look, listen to what they call themselves, patriots.
Yeah.
So they believe what they're doing is right. That you know, the part of it is called the Tree of Liberty, right? There's a Tree of Liberty organization. There's a speech they took from one of them. I think Jefferson. It says sometimes the trees of liberty have to be fertilized with the blood of patriots.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So they believe that what they're doing is right. That they're going down there saving the country. Like, where did they get these notions? Like, this is not something you just wake up and you have. This is acculturated. You're growing up in an atmosphere in this place that are teaching you these things, that are making you believe this. And some people actually take it seriously. That's the point. Some people take it seriously. Other people, you know, they listen to it, they take it, you know, they have it, you know, but other people, some of them are fed only a diet of only that. So when they in their mind, they're going to go down there. The real trick bag is 70 million Americans, right? And the majority white women, right?
Yep.
Make the play.
The majority of these people are voting for repression. Wow. They're voting for that. And that's part of the discussion. That's another part of the discussion that's not being had. Half of
that's exactly where I want to go.
A little more than half of white America is voting for this nonsense.
And man, you said the majority of them are white women?
The majority of white women voted for Trump.
That's right.
The majority of white women voted for Trump.
That's
and
right.
as a matter of fact, more white women voted for Trump this time than last time, right? In terms of percentages and numbers, right?
So here's where that goes. And we need to be clear about this.
Wow.
Between the drama of all of that craziness voting that way and the drama playing out as that played out on the Capitol just a couple days ago, we are looking at what was once called the fringe far right being moved to the very center of the national stage of the political arena.
Yes.
We need to be clear about that. And to talk about the task of organizing, I have said from the last few years, in addition to a fresh fight for direct democracy, that we absolutely need to be fighting for a serious push for a national anti-racist mandate, so this country does not lose another generation of white folks to this crazy madness.
Right.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And you know, people protect their family. And you know, just like black women are protecting the institution, and brown women are protecting our institution of our families and our community, they're doing the same thing. They're protecting their family, protecting the institutions that exist in their mind, that they believe is right for them. And in the way that it is being taught to them, God and country and all this other kind of stuff. And so they believe that this is something that these institutions have raised people on. And so that's why we have to get at the heart of what Zaid said, trying to change all of this, a national anti-racist movement to really talk about this stuff, right? To really have a discussion about all these things that are going on, right? That's why I always get a little, you know, I get a little frustrated sometimes when we have our events and rallies and different things, and everybody shows up in our community, right? And I appreciate the support and the allies and all of those other things because we need it. But at the end of the day, sometimes we got to go rally in your neighborhood. We got to rally in your community because the people who were killing the people in our community was born there.
That are living comfortably there.
Educated there, right? And there's many more where they can, right? And so that's where the problem is, right? We need to be attacking the institutions there that are creating people who believe that that it's okay for them to come to our community and murder people.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's and the people who are voting for these institutions and all these things and these laws and policies to continue to be in place, right? That stuff needs to be overthrown. All of that, that mindset, that thinking, that stuff needs to be overthrown. We need to be talking about. We need to have a full discussion about all these things. America has never had an honest, straightforward discussion about all this stuff that's going on. Never, and we're still not having one. They just got around to calling these people what they are as they were in these buildings. They just got around. It's the first time they start calling them rioters and mobs and all this other kind of stuff. Really, what they are insurrectionists.
Right.
That's what they are.
Who are probably direct descendants of the insurrectionist and treasonist that came before them, right? Like this isn't new. They had, like, when you're talking about there's a certain way of thinking that they have, there's an entire library of information, there's an entire education that they have that seems real fringe, but it was mainstream once before too.
Sure.
Reconstruction was destroyed by sanctioned racist violence. Sure. That went so far as to attack and kill people in state house situations in several states in these United States, right? And that's before us. And some of this killing, the killing didn't start in 1876. It accelerated after the Rutherford Hayes Samuel Tilden Compromise in 1877. It accelerated, but 2,000 people had been killed already during Reconstruction, right? Yep. And this is the engine that drove the death of Reconstruction. And so, and that's the history that we're not talking about. That's what's not being taught. That's what's not being addressed. And the foundations of racism that drove that mess. No, and that's the kind of reconstruction in education that needs to take place.
Right.
And I know we're rounding up, but to that point, and as you said, Jonathan, about them knowing, and it's probably their ancestors and stuff, this is something that they do discuss at their table. We know, is that in Virginia every year that they do the reenactment of the Civil War? That's like a big to-do down south, and they do these things, and they know their history, and they say, hey, and these are, I know we're going to be on with Superintendent Leon, and I know we've been trying to do things in our community about teaching our history and even civics. One of the things these discussions have been going on and on over the last week. Great. One of the things that has been consistent is that our civic education in the United States is just probably at the lowest ever. that's something very important because a lot of people don't even understand how government works. And one of the things I remember that when they were in that in the Capitol doing the rioting and everything, one of the things they kept saying was our house, this is our house, and they meant what they said.
Yeah, they called the people in there traitors.
But it went so far as to call for Pence's head.
Yeah,
that's their man. Death to Pence.
But if y'all recall, and John, I'm sure you do, you know, when Amiri used to come by the studio, one of the things he used to always tell us was, he said, focusing on them 27 states where black people populate, right? And he said, think about all of them offices that we need to take over, the mayor's office, the governor's office. You know, he would point that out to us every time he came, Mayor. And he would say, I want y'all focusing on that. And Mayor, you hear me say this all the time when Donna talking about civics education, and you remember before Mary went home to be with the Lord, you was the councilman, and he pointed at City Hall. He said, y'all want to do something radical, take over that building and make potential pay their taxes.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, my big plug for civic education. I think every school should teach debate, and they should teach academic high school debate, because I think that we need to have conversations about how to find evidence. What is evidence, right? Like how do you look at sources? How do you weigh sources? How do you have conversations about what is? I mean, I'm having some of those conversations with my students right now, and it's fascinating, right? Like, because there's some kids who are like, well, I don't really know how to like differentiate between information, right? Well, I mean, I asked one kid today, I was like, well, you think anything can be true? Like, well, anything could be true, right? You can't really say it's not. I was like, well, a lot of the people who were there in the Capitol believe that black people were inferior, like that we're genetically criminal inferior. You think that's possibly true? Pause. Wait, you thinking about it? Well, I mean, how can you know it's not? Ooh, right? So, I mean, like, this is going on where people get so much information, they're not even critically understanding who they are, right?
But Jonathan, to that point, you're talking about kids. Think of that woman who was a retired Air Force person, who's been in high school, who's possibly been in college, who's done a career in the military. So that means she had to have, I'm probably Air Force, so you have to have Air Force education, and she still got indoctrinated and went through that door and ended up being dead as a result of her, being you know. And
she is getting more sympathy than the cop from New Jersey.
Right.
Hey, man, we got 1 minute. So I got to ask you this, man. So, you know, there's a lot of conversation going on around the country. I had this with Rakir Lumumba, this conversation. Listen, man, a lot of people are really starting to wonder, what the hell is Stacey Abrams being offered? Because we understand Jamie Harrison is now going to be in charge of the DNC. And we know, and based on what you just said too, when you're talking about white women was trying to destroy America and black women saved America and its democracy, what the hell is being offered to Stacey Abrams, my brother?
Zero. And that's the problem. That's the problem, and it's a full on problem, most of the work that we have to do, the work that Stacey Abrams did, and Zaid touched on it, the financing of that and all of that comes. I mean, these people need you, don't mean they want you, right? And that's the difference. Like, and so they need us to preserve this place, and we need to protect what's going on, because we know if we let these people get in charge, they come to get us, and we just have to have a battle. At the end of the day, we have to begin to demand more and build our own stuff. We have to build our own institutions, build our own things. That's the part of self-determination. We're gonna have to do that. If these people don't want us at their table, we got to make our own tables, and that's important. And Stacey Abrams right now, as I said, I was on one of the things with CWA. Speaking, I said right now, Stacey Abrams is one of the most powerful people in this country.
Without a doubt.
Not powerful black women, one of the most powerful people in this country. Period. Out of all of them, You know, what she did single-handedly, of course, by organizing all the people that helped out was a part of that. But what she did was you know, turn the tide of the direction that this country was going in.
Yes.
She turned the tide by doing that. She could have easily did what most people would do, gave up, walked away, or went somewhere and tried to get somebody else to help her or save her for next time. She went head-on battle with these people.
Right.
And defeated the president and Mitch McConnell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, she's probably the most powerful person in this country today.
Right.
Right. And needs to be treated that way. And it's only going to happen if other people say it. Like, we need to say it. We need to be talking about it. Right. We need to be raising that. Particularly us, like, you know, black men in specific. Right. We need to be saying that. Look, this woman on her own did this. Like, she built this thing. And she ought to have carte blanche. Like, they didn't put her in she not nowhere down in the White House. She not nowhere down in D.C. Like, she obviously doing what she want to do on this side, and she might want to do that. But, I mean, the DNC, period, should be making sure that they follow her around.
Right. They need to make sure that when she runs for governor 2 years from now, and tell me, I mean, she's going for that governor White House like it's Game of Thrones, and she got all 3 dragons. Like, I think she's going for the governor's house, and she needs to have the full backing of the DNC. She needs to get millions and millions of dollars. I mean, it needs to be the most expensive race in the history of the United States. Because if she does not become governor of Georgia in 2 years, that is a crime on the whole Democratic Party.
And 2 years, if people even remember.
Knows how to play Game of Thrones. You're a cool teacher.
But I think it's more of what does Stacey Abrams want, because I thought surely it would be the DNC, but to see Jamie and to see Mayor Bottoms down there, to see Mayor as the vice down there, so I think it's some strategy. And Jonathan, it might just be that focus. She's going back for that seat. Yeah, I
read that she said, I want to stay. I read someplace that she said she wanted to stay in Georgia, and she's single focused. Like, she got to focus. And when I read that, I was like, oh, she got to focus. There's a meme that says, had a picture of Stacey Abrams, and it said, it said, there's a picture of Stacey Abrams, and it said, if I bet was a person. Like,
I seen that. Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I just see that. And Mayor, before you round up, you know, a couple of years ago, you were the keynote speaker at Ada Pi, and you that speech I actually go back and listen to every so often. But tomorrow is the MLK breakfast, and DL Hughley is the keynote speaker, and we'll be posting the information later. But I wanted to make sure that you know that you were aware. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
And it's via Zoom, of course. It's not in person.
Well, he still ain't gonna chop it up like the man, but yeah, he gonna
remember that. Do you remember that? Oh my gosh, when he took us back to Africa and brought us to the shores of the U.S. Woo! I can remember that speech. Woo. That speech right there, Mayor. I'm just sorry. Go ahead, Jonathan. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, Ed. I know that we were wrapping things up, and
yeah. So, man, you got any final statements? Anything you want to say, my brother?
I thank you guys and everybody for putting this on, man. It's always a pleasure. We just need to make sure this thing's got to be blasted out. People need to be educated.
Let us say congratulations to New Post, New Jersey Urban Mayors Association.
Yeah,
listen, I got an open letter coming to you, right, to everybody, all right, summing up this moment and shouting you out on that. So just look forward to that.
Good. Okay.
And congratulations. It's both, and it's you and Mayor Warren. So we're expecting great things out of the organization, Mayor Warren. I mean, Mayor Barack and you and Mayor Warren. It has been some things we've done in the past with that organization. So we expect you to do great things, sir.
That's right. We on it. Thank you, y'all. I appreciate you.
All right, man.
We appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, y'all. That was the Mayor's Forum, you know, and we get ready to push on now. Who's up next, John?
We have the superintendent of Newark Public Schools. We have Superintendent Roger Leon in the building. On the online building right now, on the virtual building. We have you here. Thank you very much.
Newark school teachers are really cool.
Yeah.
That shouldn't even be fair. We shouldn't even have our brother on. We should go and open up the studio and say we got to have Roger back in the studio. But Roger, good to see you, my brother.
But he always his headgear is always he just
That's how
always
you know he's from North.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, Superintendent, Happy New Year, sir.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Happy New Year to all of you. I was hearing that conversation, and trust me, I wanted in on it. Really,
we know
really
you
good,
did.
really good conversation. I know.
Well, Superintendent, I know Jonathan got a pass, but let me jump in real quick. How do you take January 6th and turn it into a civics lesson going forward?
Oh my goodness!
Great lead question.
Wait, so
That was the opening question. It was like, boom.
y'all didn't even allow me to warm up. I appreciate it.
She got the superintendent picking right up with a man locked off on it.
So there are parallel lines that have to be drawn. So you have to understand that in the city of Newark, one of the things that occurred years ago, I'm talking about a number of years ago, significant, is that civics isn't taught in our schools. And so from an academic standpoint—
Can you repeat that, sir? Because people don't say believe that, but can you repeat that?
Civics has not been taught in Newark schools. And so—
in these schools. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
Yes, so part of what we're doing is obviously writing the curriculum, providing offerings for students, and it's written as an elective course. So what happened last week has impressed upon me in a really, really profound way that we cannot leave civics as an elective where students choose. So what we're going to do is we're revamping from pre-kindergarten 3-year-old program all the way through 8th grade. We are going to embed to learn about our city, to learn about our state, to understand that the way that we fix injustices in the world is with the greatness of the children that are walking in Newark schools. So by the time they get to high school, it's a bit too late for us to figure it out. In the high school, simultaneously, not only am I going to take the world history curriculum, which is offered in 9th grade, and the US 1 curriculum in 10th grade, but we will create an addendum to both, because those students will move through high school obviously quicker. The seniors that are in our high schools right now may not necessarily be the beneficiaries of this work, but I trust that they, all of us, will benefit from a far better city that has taught its children how to actually create a citizenry. See, last week it's important because we've seen rallies and people are trying to do a parallel line between what occurred last week in the nation's capital and the work that has occurred in this Black Lives Movement. And the comparisons are very black and white. We can see that last week we did not see dogs attacking those citizens.
Come on.
And we can draw parallels to the struggle of the 50s and the 60s. See, what happens in this country, and I love this country, I love no other like this country, and I visited a number of countries around the world, have no disrespect for any country. But ultimately, for us to accomplish the incredible goals and for this country to realize its true potential, we have to come with and in terms and understand some very important facts. That this country has been built on the struggle of Black people. That the reason why America is a great country today and will continue to be a great country in the future is because of Black people. When we come to terms with that, then we will begin to address some of the injustices that we actually see. When our children understand that they must become presidents of the United States, superintendent of schools, mayors of our city, when our children understand that it is a dilemma that we have left for them, that they have this problem in Newark and in all of the school districts in rural America too, that it is a problem for all of the children to resolve. And adults need to understand that what occurred last week, that injustice is an injustice against all of us, even though all of us were not there. And that ultimately America will be the great country that it is poised to be because of us.
And the church said, "Amen."
Yeah.
And,
Well,
and
one thing
go ahead, Jonathan.
I was going to say that I love what you're talking about with the civics curriculum. I would do a plug, shameless plug, in terms of just my experiences with debate, right? Like one of the things that I'm looking at in terms of this conflict and many others is that people don't know how to differentiate between what is evidence and what is not. Like that, like we have kids that are literally struggling with what is real, what is not real, right? Like we were in the debate classes I teach right now, I was asking students, questions about, well, how do they know what's true? And some of them came to conclusions that anything could be right. And I was asking some point blank, right, today, like, well, do you think that slavery could possibly be good? Like you're saying anything can be right. And they're like, maybe, right? Like there were some students who, because of a lack of like knowledge, history, like what they were reading, that they could not take a stand that slavery bad, right? Oppression bad. Because because I think that there's just so much information that we don't really like everything's equal. Like whether or not you say that slavery is bad or not bad is like vanilla and chocolate ice cream, right? Because all evidence is all there and it's all someone's opinion about whether or not something is legitimate or not legitimate or not. And
well, I think at the heart of what you're saying, there's a level of confusion, right? So we confuse laws to signify a state of time. Just because there was slavery in this country, no one should wake up tomorrow morning thinking that that was right. That the whole idea that people believe that they are better than someone else simply because they look differently than they is not a reason for that. We cannot allow, and in this generation, especially this generation, we cannot send confusing messages because it appears as though law and justice saw color last week. And our children can never think that they can engage in what we saw, not because they're Black and perhaps a police officer would have acted differently. We have enough evidence that lets people know that that would be a final outcome. I think that ultimately our children have to understand that they are critical parts of the solution, that our students shouldn't think that they cannot compete with people who look fundamentally different than they. They actually have to work with everybody. And we have what I call an unfair burden in Newark, because you see, Newark, at least as an education program, led the country. In the 40s and the 50s, the highest performing districts in the United States of America were in Newark, New Jersey. Some of our students don't know that. Some of our students don't know that United States Supreme Court justices, as I've shared on this radio broadcast before, attended Newark schools. Some of our students don't know that the incredible African-American congressman, the Honorable Don Payne, that his existence rooted here in Newark, New Jersey, Elliott Street School, and then Barringer High School.
And you know what?
Greatness. In Newark.
Superintendent, you know what? I've actually positioned that there's a book here in Orange. It's called Homeboy from Orange, and I went to the board and said this should be required reading, core curriculum, and that was something that I went to Shaw University, and core curriculum was the first thing you had to do in that first semester. Is you had to understand what Shaw University was about and why you're here and what happened before you got here. And I think core curriculum is something that we really need to do in our schools, especially, and you know, we need to do it in Orange, Newark, East Orange. It's something so people can, so the babies can understand. And you said something earlier that the young people today are understanding that there's something we're leaving for them to continue. And you're the superintendent and you're a product of the Newark school system. So something in you said that I may leave, but I'm coming back too. And even in my school, in our civics class, and I'm class of 85, our teacher, Mr. Bryant, that was in our class, what are you going to do and how are you going to come back to this community to help this community to continue to be great? That was something that was posed to us in high school. So we have to get back to doing those things.
Now, I have a little bit of an ingredient. I don't necessarily know if our upbringing was the same. I know that people who know me know that I come from humble beginnings, that my parents divorced when I was really, really young, and that my mom raised my 3 older sisters and me on welfare. The struggle is what I speak of. And to those who are in the struggle, and there are, single dads that are out there as well, as I'm constantly reminded when I'm speaking in big audiences. I always talk to single moms, and some single dads are like, we're out here too. That ultimately, at the end, the strategy towards success is there has to be somebody in that house. It doesn't matter if the dreams have not been realized there, but there must be an adult in the life of every child in every home that has to be centered on making sure that that child is aware of all of the greatness that is there. And then what my responsibility is to make sure that I have adults in the school, from the principal to all of the teaching staff members and all of the non-instructional staff members. You don't have to be have a teaching certificate in Newark to be a teacher. I have incredible custodial workers and security guards and food service workers that teach our children every day. That is the combination of the two. My job, as I have also shared, is I'm living my dream. My dream was to be where I'm at. And what that means is confusing, I think, to perhaps some people. I'm not satisfied being the superintendent and being in the title. That the dream that I have is that in this role, I'm supposed to help all of the boys and girls and all of the ladies and gentlemen in Newark make their dreams come true. And so when we have that combination, all we are destined is poised for success. So I need any of the parents that are listening, I need you to be as focused and as centered as you can be. You don't have to be perfect, because we know everyone isn't, but you need to be concentrating on making sure that you're providing everything that you can at home, making sure that they have quiet time, making sure that they have homework, make sure that they're reading, make sure that whatever it is that they need, that you work hard at trying to meet that. And then put pressure on the school to do its job in educating your child, because I'm guaranteeing that with those combinations, we're going to have all dreams of all children in Newark realized, regardless of the school that they attend. Ultimately, we're going to get it right, and we're working hard right now to do just that.
Now,
Thank you, sir. Go ahead. Pause. Go. Thank you, sir.
Now, I think that do we have any other questions that address, like, just, the impact from January 6th, this white riot of 2021? Do we have other questions to like that, or can we move on to the obvious and COVID and what schooling looks like now? Are we ready to move on to that part, or do we have more questions on that?
Well, let me just say this. First off, I agree, of course, with everything the superintendent just said. But clearly, I think that if you look at, what Brother Kafele is putting up, I think that, and like what the mayor just said, right? We've come to this place where, Jonathan, we've got to continually tell our story, right? And to hear the superintendent tell that story, right, I think would mean a tremendous amount. If he's telling that to the staff, that it's okay for them to tell that story to young people in high school, in grammar school, so that they might feel good about themselves, right? So when you ask that question, Jonathan, and you say, could slavery be bad? They wouldn't have any doubt about it being bad, because they now would have a reference point of having had somebody in authority give them that level of history that may cause them to go and do the research. But if that's not even discussed in class, Jonathan, how can you even feel good about yourself, right? That's on one level. And then what the mayor talked about, when we talk about civics, if we're not even having that conversation in terms of how government works, right, and what a mayor is, right, what a council person is, or what an assembly person is, that is one of the reasons why young people don't care about politics at all, right? They don't even know how a Roger Leone could even be possible, right, in the city of Newark. How could that be possible to come from welfare, right? How could that be possible to come, from Puerto Rican parents? How could that even be possible for him, right? Unless he tell that story.
Yeah, but you know what? You make such a brilliant point, and you made me think of something. You can't be in a position where you don't care when you actually never knew. You see, part of what has happened is some of the instructional program has been in hiding. And part of our task in schools is to unveil and reveal that every child in every single school, every classroom, every grade, every school is a genius. And it's the responsibility of the adults who are teaching those children to help the children realize it and help all of the other adults realize it. So I won't say that it's that kids don't care. I think that right now what has happened is we've deprived the world from them knowing. So our job is to teach children so that in fact they know, then they care, and they can only make this world a far better place. That's where our issue is right now, that the world is not a better place, and we are going to be the ones who fix that.
As we move on, and Superintendent Leon, every time you come on, I ask this question. And this is a question, you're sitting in the seat, and this is a question for every superintendent, particularly the ones in the Essex County school system. Where are we with the Amistad legislation? And it seems that this could fit into that curriculum. And I know in South Orange, Maplewood, they have a freedom school so it goes beyond the classroom. In this case, it continues on Saturday. That's something that should be replicated in all of our cities as well. The freedom schools, and again, the Amistad legislation. If nowhere else, Orange, East Orange, Newark, Irvington, Hillside, it should be fully implemented and flourish.
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that occurred over time with the Amistad curriculum, it was written, at least in Newark, it was written and then it was embedded in other courses. And what happens when you embed something from a curriculum standpoint in another course, like in world history, in US 1, you dilute it so much that no one knows anything about it. Assemblyman Bill Payne has worked too hard in that legislation. Me, in this role, I've taken a different approach. We have totally junked whatever it was we thought we were doing and have completely revamped the Amistad curriculum worthy of being in front of children. And I have to thank all of my social studies teachers across the entire district. I have a new director of social studies, and Ms. Conover, and Dr. Riley is the assistant superintendent of teaching and learning. They have actually jump-started something that will impose on other people's thinking. See, part of it is not knowing that you're great. The Amistad curriculum will teach the children that they and their history is just embedded in richness. So I would welcome anyone to look at our curriculum to see what we're doing as it relates to Amistad. And I also agree that the school districts that you reference in Essex County should help move this conversation forward. And I know that Assemblyman Bill Payne has been reaching out and is definitely wanting us to do nothing less than that. More importantly, because it's in statute, but really importantly, because it's the right thing to do.
And the freedom schools too. Have you considered helping out? I know, are you familiar with the one in South Orange, Maplewood, and replicating those in Newark and,
Yeah, I know that the school district has a new superintendent. So, in terms of the work ahead, there's clearly a path as to how we're going to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you see Kafele's what he said? He said he's hearing about good things down only in Newark. He's not hearing about it anywhere else.
Exactly.
You see that?
Principal, I saw just because how I'm set up, that man is a brilliant mind. And I'm just so appreciative of his writings and his work. He is playing a very important role. Not only has he played in Newark, continues to, but definitely throughout this country. And I'm so appreciative of my good friend, Principal Kafele, for any of his thoughts on any of the work that we're doing, and lots of work ahead as well.
But you know what, Roger? That's why I think that schools around the country are watching you, man. You know what I mean? I think that people around the world are watching you because, you know, not only are you willing to do what you just said, you know, just go and dismantle, you know, I don't want to cuss, but dismantle shit that ain't working, you know, and then put
Well,
in
you know what?
and put in programs that are working.
You know what you made me, you making me do too much thinking. So I'm going to have a meeting with you separate. It's that a lot of people think that we don't know. And just because people in Newark don't say anything doesn't mean that we agree with it. Ultimately, we do have a consciousness. Some people act differently with theirs. My responsibility is to make sure that we're impacting children and helping them learn so that they grow and so that they become better citizens, and then help the adults who haven't figured it out understand what happens when children have figured it out for us. So, you know, I appreciate, you know, your comment, Terry. I have had a really incredible experience in this time period that I've been in this role, in speaking with superintendents throughout our county, our state, and the country. And I know that we are just poised and ready in Newark to engage in conversations with my friends who are doing incredible work in urban school districts all across this country, from Phoenix to New York to LA, definitely in Philly. There's important work that people are doing out there. In Miami, in particular, superintendent there is doing something absolutely incredible work. And so our strategy ultimately will help the bigger strategy, and that's all of these superintendents really moving their school districts all in the same direction for greatness. Yeah. That'll help flip it ultimately at the end. And I share for the people who are worried about us doing that, that they should be.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing is, man, is that you know, I know the value, you know, having grown up in Newark and you know and all of that. I know the value of having a superintendent that give a damn about you means a lot, because he can make sure that the teachers who work for him care about the kids that they teach, and you know, so that those kind of questions that Jonathan get, you know, won't be gotten, because they will have teachers, you know, who will be able to help them come, you know, to the level of understanding and self-love that they need to be great. You know, just having somebody to say that to you means a lot, man. So, you know, I'm always elated, man, every time you come on. I'm like Principal Kivele, man. I appreciate you being in that role, man. And I know the world is watching you, but I'm also watching you. And I'm impressed, you know, with everything that's going on in the city of Newark, because I want this city to win. But more importantly, I want these kids to win.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now,
I will say this though. Sorry, John. Y'all did start this interview kind of really heavy. Okay.
Yeah, Donna did that.
I was expecting, you know, is he gonna give us what rapper is he gonna give us at the end? I was expecting something like that. So my sister from Orange, I will be talking to you later.
Call to the principal's office, superintendent's office. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, but superintendent, this is but here's the reality. This is a heavy time, and getting back to, I know, moving on, how are we doing with COVID, you know, with the babies learning, you know, distant learning, and those that's maybe coming in, and are we dealing with the mental health part of it, you know, kids not having their normal socialization, and are we monitoring how this is affecting them?
Yeah, so a lot in that question, and we're attacking it in different ways. So definitely right now, part of what we did during the summer is teachers assisted our assistant superintendent of teaching and learning in revamping all of our curriculum. Many of the courses that the students are taking right now are different from when our students actually were taking the courses in person. The board has been extremely brilliant in their assistance and support from the president, the vice president, and all of the other 7 members, even our late board member, Padilla, may he rest in peace, critical and integral decision makers in what we were going to do and how to address this issue. On the high end, let me talk about other things that also matter. As of to this week, we have distributed over 2.7 million meals to the children and their families throughout the whole entire city of Newark. I'm appreciative of that. Our attendance was struggling at the start, and it has increased over the course of the last couple of months, consistent with what our high expectations were since when I started. We tested the students in September, October to realize that while things are kind of real different, we wanted to norm them a little bit. We wanted to see what was the impact of the summer. Usually during the summer, there's a slide. It's called a summer slide. But also we know that based on some research from Ed Research in June of 2020, that there's this learning loss that has been studied over time in some of the major school districts across the country. So in knowing that there's an impact from being away from school, we not only did assessments, but we also are focusing on the social emotional learning needs of students. So we've been tracking students. We've been addressing students' needs. From last year, we were focusing on the students who were giving rise and concern to us from the district standpoint. We were giving additional attention to them. And then obviously during the start of this year, every student has experienced a loss because they can't be with their friends, they can't be in the classroom with their teachers. So we're looking at it from a very dramatic standpoint and then reducing the list of need based on realities that we're seeing in the classrooms. We know that remote instruction is very difficult and we know that it's very different. But we also see that at the end of the tunnel, the light that is shining bright has great promise. We have had a couple of situations where schools who do not have a certified teacher would have normally not had a particular class. And so what we've done is we've assigned teachers that are working in alternate schools to remotely teach children that are not in their own school. So we're utilizing strategies, we're creating projects and themes that we believe will help motivate children in ways that we are used to not doing with paper and pencil. So we have made dramatic changes. Are they good enough? Well, obviously they would only be good enough if every student has his or her needs met. I would argue that we're struggling very, very hard to make sure that that's a reality. And I would take the opportunity to remind parents to reach out to their teachers, their principals, and the school's pandemic response team as it relates to any needs, whether it's technology. We've distributed over 20,000 Chromebooks to children over the course of last year and this school year. We've provided Wi-Fi to every single one of them, and definitely hotspots to students who needed them. So we're engaged in it. The teachers and the essential workers have been instrumental in all this work. And I have to say that if it wouldn't be for our nurses have been super critical on multiple strategies, not only in the district, and now with the vaccination that the mayor was talking about, our nurses have been playing a critical role from the start. So food service workers, custodial workers, and all of our security guards, our LPNs and our nurses have been doing an absolutely incredible job to get us to a far better place. We are at a great place because of all of the staff. And I have to tell you, I'm so proud of our parents. They have over years really been focusing and paying attention on providing technology needs to their own children, that it afforded us an opportunity to make sure that what we had, we were able to distribute to them. So I've answered that question on different grounds, from food to social emotional learning to the academic piece to the technology. We're making sure that our teachers are tested. We've created district protocols as to what you need to do when you enter our building, as well as procedures that you need to follow that are outlined on the district's web. 4 clear steps on what you do, from symptom screening, temperature check, feet and hand sanitizing stations for everyone that returns back to work. We're really confident of our strategy, and we're just looking forward to the opportunity to demonstrating that to everyone.
Is there a plan to offer the vaccine when it becomes available to teachers and to parents or the community at large through the Newark Public School System? I know that I received an email a few weeks ago talking about a vaccine, but wanted to bring that to you.
Yep, thank you so much for the lob. So I appreciate it. we're in partnership with the city of Newark and the health department. The leadership of the mayor has been absolutely incredible. And all of the folks on his team, from the chief of staff to the director of the health department to the director of sanitation, the water department. I could go down the list, the business administrator, the legal counsel, the director of the health department. Absolutely incredible work that they and members of their team have in fact been doing. So we're in partnership with them. There are going to be opportunities to be vaccinated in our schools all throughout the city of Newark. So you need to go to the district's website or the city's website so that you can see locations and times. As it relates to staff, our expectation is to begin that process next month. So that means February getting your first shot, March getting your second shot. We know that there is a list. We know that there's a criteria. Once we get the go, we will send out the registration links to all of our staff members. So it'll be for our staff members, regardless of title and regardless of if they live in the city of Newark. All they would need to do is make sure that they have a district ID with them.
Wow. So you're saying as early as February 1st, people can start getting vaccines if you work in the Newark Public School System.
Well, let me tell you, people are trying to get on every possible line as soon as they possibly can. So if people have already done it, more power to them. Ultimately, what we need is to have people vaccinated and to tell that story so that ultimately at the end, those who make that decision can then also tell that story. Well, keeping in mind to make sure that they're in consultations with their doctors, things of that nature, because we want to make sure that everyone who does have some health issues are seeking that guidance before they actually get that vaccine. But our expectation is next month to begin to vaccinate our staff members who are interested.
And of course, the obvious question is, have you already received a vaccine and do you plan on getting vaccinated?
So the answer to the first part is no, I haven't been vaccinated. And the answer to the second question, it's interesting that you asked, because last time that I was asked this question, I lobbed it and I said, it's a personal decision. People should talk to their doctors. I will do that. And when I am ready, I will make that decision for myself. You know, you're my brother. You know that I love you dearly. I didn't want to bring breaking news to all of you, but this superintendent will be getting his vaccine as it relates to COVID-19. Yes.
All right, cool. And that is something that you have not revealed before, and you are doing it now. Would you share the why? Because we've been, on the last few weeks, we've been having lots of conversations about the vaccine. We've even had the head of University Hospital on the show, and we've had long conversations about it, right? And every week there are some really heated conversations about whether to be vaccinated or whether or not. Would you care to share your reasons? I know they're very personal.
Yes, so I think that everyone has to make their own decisions. And the last thing that I would want to do is somebody to say, oh, I'm doing it because he said it. But I want you to know, Dr. Arnahal did it. And he's the president of University Hospital, and he's a brilliant mind. Ultimately, the fact that this virus has gotten out of control has to be what worries us more. People need to understand that based on health issues, this virus goes from impacting you for 10 days to ending your life. And that it destroys not only your the people who are around you, but the people who could have benefited if you were alive. Sometimes we take it for granted that our role is now. Our role is far bigger than the moment. And so ultimately, the citizens that wind up doing this, they're not only benefiting their health now, they are creating opportunities for better days for themselves and others tomorrow. So I see myself as having a responsibility. Also, I want you to know that I've also talked to my doctors to make sure, hey, should I do this? Does it make sense? And so in receiving all of the green light, I'm at a position now, unlike the other day, to actually be able to answer that question. If I was still in the midst of figuring it out, I would have said, thank you for asking. And when I've decided, I will be the one who knows. Right now, thank you for asking. And now you know.
Okay, well, thank you.
So taking the vaccine is not just for you. Taking the vaccine then is for your family as well.
Yeah. So my 83-year-old mom lives with me, and she tells everybody I live with her. And I have to tell you that I cannot have my mom compromised. I lost my dad 2 hours before Father's Day, and my sister takes care of him, and he wound up having COVID and then passed, not because of COVID, but because his health had been already not well, that he wasn't able to move on. I don't want people experiencing that. I don't want people not being able to celebrate the life of their families like we weren't able to do during this summer. So to all that have suffered, understand that when I'm making decisions, I'm not making decisions because I think impacting your life is not important. I'm not doing it because my life has been impacted. I'm making decisions based on the information as I have it and the emotions that come with the realities of how life is impacting us all. So I unfortunately can share in the fact that this virus has impacted lives profoundly because it has impacted mine.
So do we have any more questions on this part before we would go on to the next part? Are there any more questions on the vaccine or COVID as it relates to the superintendent or our schools?
No, but I would like to make a statement, John, just to say that, you know, the mayor said that he would take the vaccine as well, and one of the things he said, Superintendent Leon, he said that, you know, one of the things is about, you know, telling people to do their research, like you just said, get the information you need to get, talk to your doctors. He said, you know, what else do we tell people who, particularly in our city, who are dying? What else do we have, right? All we have is this vaccine, you know, in order to save people's lives. Because if you don't, if you got something else besides this vaccine that's gonna save people's lives, then show it to us, right? Because there doesn't seem to be anything else that's going to save and protect, particularly elderly people in our community, and particularly elderly members of our community.
I just have a tendency in how I think to kind of try to flip things on its head. Think for a moment. Let me take off my hat real quick. Think for a moment. We're just gonna us, right? So the government has reached out to Black and brown communities and said, we're here to help you take this. Let me put my hat on a second, okay? The fact that people are like, oh my God, oh, should I do this? Should I not?
Oh, we just seem to have lost. We just seem to have lost the superintendent. Let me see. He just dropped out. Let's so we can see what happened with his phone. But we'll have him when he contacts us. He'll be back on. But this is the thing, and I believe he is back on. So, Superintendent, I think we have about to have you back.
He's coming.
Yeah. This is one of those things that always happens, right? Like in terms of classes, this is our new online reality. Sometimes we're in, sometimes we're out, but like we have to always roll with it and be flexible about what's going on.
Everybody's online now. Everybody.
Right. And so, you know, I have students that you know, sometimes they go offline and they come on back in. You know, we'll make up the work. We'll do what we got to do because we know this is just the reality of 2021 and what we have to do in 2021. But I'm glad we got some breaking news. And I think that it's really good that where leaders in our community have this conversation with us about what we would do in this particular situation, because I mean, I think there really is a problem with information that we get, and there's so many conspiracy theories, and there's so many, and some legitimately so, based on the history of what's happened with African Americans in medical profession, right? So there's so much like legitimate history that people know about that make them much more skeptical in terms of how the United States government works, et cetera, right? Like, so I understand that, but I also think it's important that people that we respect, that people who are leaders in our communities, just join the conversation, right? Like, and I respect that. Talk to your doctor. Right.
And even the community realized this because we didn't, during this rollout, have the best leadership with this rollout, but the different entities took what they needed, you know, from the government, but they made sure that they kept control of the message and for the most part, to ensure, because one of the things in terms of coming to the community, like, and being sensitive, we know that this is a problem, but we also know that this is affecting your community directly. We have to get to some solutions. So has been a very it's interesting journey in terms of, this process to the cure, not to cure, into a vaccine, and just trying to get our community to understand and to be confident in the process.
Right. And the other part is that part of it is that it makes a difference on who's in the conversation too, right? And I think, when you have, someone, who was skeptical about it, do his own research, then brings that back to the group. I think that makes that makes a lot of difference, and it makes an impact, I think, on people in that group, particularly as we talk about our community. Because, remember, John, one of the things I've always said is that what's wrong with us is that we have such low information, right? And that's always been our problem.
And I think we have the superintendent is back. Welcome back.
Don't take that 5G hat
Hi,
off.
can you
no
hear
more.
me, or you're having technical difficulties hearing me? Can you hear
No,
me?
we hear you
We
well.
can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, so they're a little back. I said government and I got disconnected. I thought y'all changed up on me.
Yeah,
It would have been us.
yeah.
It would have
Yeah,
been
you
us.
gotta
It was, it's just, we know you watch, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate you all. Thank you for letting me. Thank you for letting me back in. I appreciate that. But I remember what if Riley wants to kind of go back to the basic point. I can refresh on what I was saying if that works.
Yeah, so what you got to do though is what I said is that having you in the game as you begin to talk about now, the decision that you've come to, right? And remember, I talked about you wasn't just making decisions for yourself, you were making decisions for your family, right? As you talk about, how did you come to this decision? Well, I'm thinking about other people, right? I'm thinking about,
Yeah.
my family.
Yep. So
And
yeah,
so
I
it's not
remember
just me
the
just
point.
coming in.
I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the point that I was making, but now I remember that I think it'll make sense. The government, and I took off my hat real quick, right? The government has said to Black and brown people, here, take this. It'll make you better. And you're shocked as to why people think that that's a good idea. I understand it. I think it actually makes sense that folks are contemplating, can this be good for us? And so ultimately, people who don't look like our residents need to be administering this vaccine so that folks can understand that it is here to help all of us, whether they look like us or not. And so our folks, as it relates to the education of it, we're going to need to work a little bit differently in the school district to assist the work that is occurring in the city so that our parents and the families of students who attend our school are aware of this, of where the vaccines are, of what are the side effects of it, to help them in important decision making. That's why I referenced, going to the doctor is extremely important so that you are making the best decision for yourself.
Jonathan, I think we've exhausted that with him.
So the question that I was going to ask, and the last part in terms of the vaccine, we talked about COVID, is post-COVID. There's been a lot of people talk about what does get lost inevitably when you have online learning. It's not the same as in-person learning, but unfortunately, it's the reality that we have to live in. What do we do when we come back? Is there a sense of how do we rebuild?
Sure. So I think that one of the important items to note is that what we're doing right now is not worrying about right now only. When you're in a crisis, and especially in the city of Newark, at least our school system, we always are shining brightly. Part of the learning here is that we're going to need to shine brightly when the pandemic doesn't exist. we have to create our own level of urgency. I understand that it's my responsibility as superintendent to do that, and that it's the responsibility of principals to then do that with the work of assistant superintendents and executive staff members pushing that agenda. So what will happen later is that we will definitely be at a far better place because of the work now. We know that we will change curriculum offerings so that we are maximizing opportunities for children in our schools. I already gave you one example about how we will do with staffing so that if in fact a school needs a teacher and another school has one, that will be afforded to them through this actual opportunity. So it's an opportunity to worry about the future now, because if we're only worrying about what's occurring now and we're consumed by the virus, when in fact the virus is gone, what role will people be playing? Because if only thing that you're worried about is the virus, and trust me, I believe that it is something that people need to be worrying about.
Right.
That if it consumes you, you will allow time to pass by. And there are other people that are not doing that. There are people today that are seizing the reality that they think that no one is watching the store. Ultimately, what we have to do is do both and make sure that everything is going right now and making sure we're ready for that future, because it's going to happen fast. And when it does, people are going to want things to occur in warp speed.
Yeah.
And we're going to need to be fast, but we're also going to need to be methodical later.
Fierce urgency now, said Dr. King.
Superintendent, I know what are some of the surprises, the ahas that are coming out of this challenging time, this pandemic? I know throughout the news they highlight these stories that a student who's just stepped to the plate and realized that what really it gave them a new realization of what hunger was, and they've taken on a charity and fed their community. What are some of the bright stories that have came out in spite of this challenging time?
Well, I have to tell you, I've been focusing on 4 words: patience, flexibility, confidence, and resilience. Today in my meeting with student leaders, one of the students told me that she thought that the word that I needed to add to my 4 pillars was perseverance. She's absolutely right. So one of the things that I'm so proud of our students is the resilience. The class that graduated in 2020 in June graduated with $40 million in college scholarships. How about that? That in 2 years' time, from the year before the pandemic to last year, approximately $84 million in college scholarships for children from the city of Newark. That we graduated 126 students with an associate's degree at Eastside and at Bard Early College High School. That means that we saved parents $1.8 million in college scholarship money. That we had students that actually took college level courses while they were in high school last year, saving parents over $4 million. That this year, the class of 2021 is poised for greatness. We have a student from the South Ward who has received a full ride to Harvard. We have a student from Barringer who has received a full ride to Dartmouth. Resilience. That in the midst of it all, something that I knew was going to happen because I'm from Newark, I know greatness happens here. One of the things that I want to share with you is that look at the children and they will teach us. Watch this. September 11th, they were born on or about the heels of that horrific event. They have lived over 25 years. Their parents have lived 25 years of state operated of a school district. They have a global pandemic that only arrives or is experienced every 100 years or so, and we wish it never to come back again. We have civil unrest for the pursuit of justice. And we have injustices in front of our faces in the pursuit to disrupt the greatness of this nation. Our children have to be great. They're living through all of that. And so ultimately, that is what my greatest learning is. That through it all, in Newark, we're strong. That through it all, the children are resilient. And they will persevere.
Thank you for that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. And that would be a great way to leave it out. I mean, that was just like a really, impassioned speech. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to
Picture.
ask another question that will change the tone just a little bit, right? Now, given the weight of the times that we are living in, is there anything, Superintendent Leon, that you think that we could learn from Ja Rule? Superintendent Leon?
I think you lost him with that question, man.
The government and Ja Rule.
When he comes on, we know that is his favorite rapper, and we always ask him questions about
His
that.
connection went out at the moment you
At the moment, asked the question, right?
He's probably mad as hell.
Oh man, 50 Cent must have been monitoring the conversation.
Exactly.
No, we're not going
DJ
to talk about Ja Rule.
Yeah,
DJ Rhino, the hip hop.
Talk, yeah.
DJ Rhino, the hip hop ancestors have spoken.
Oh, that is hilarious. That is hilarious. That's hilarious. All right, so but that was great. That was a great segment. I'm sure he's having technical difficulties right now.
Speaking
If he comes
of Ja
back,
Rule,
we'll
Ashanti
put
has,
it back in.
speaking of Ja Rule, Ashanti has COVID.
Oh, really?
Wow.
And over it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so he is back, and so we're asking you that weighty question, right? In this time, where we're going through all of these things, is there anything that we can learn from Ja Rule?
Well, you know that Ja Rule is my guy. I love him dearly. But it's all God's plan. I have actually read the book. It has already been written. And ladies and gentlemen, we won. God's plan.
Okay.
I don't hear no music.
Well, we don't. Okay, so
I
we were not necessarily like we can't necessarily do the Drake because we would get thrown off the air because we don't have the rights for the music, right? So we can't really do God's plan on that. And also our DJ is not actually on at the moment and could not do that because we were having, COVID has affected our show where we are America's number one hip hop show with no hip hop on it right now.
So Superintendent, we got to get you to do some Ja Rule lyrics.
we America's number one hip hop radio talk show with no hip hop on it right now. We're trying to rectify that.
Keep us in your prayers. Please make sure that you continue to keep all of the staff, all of the students, and all of our families in your prayers. And we look forward to joining you once again for an awesome opportunity to share some of the great work that we're doing in the school district. So I appreciate all of you for your time this evening.
We very much appreciate you too. Thank you for the incredible job that you were doing. I am so proud. And I say this all the time. I am so proud that you are superintendent of Newark Public Schools, and you make us proud every single day with everything you've been doing. So thank you much, my friend, my very good friend. Thank you so much for the incredible work that you've done and the incredible amount of time and energy you put into it, right, man? Like, I know you go to sleep at 2 o'clock, you wake up at 4 o'clock, you working for kids all this time. So thank you so much for you putting the Newark Public Schools first.
Yep.
Bye-bye, everybody.
We definitely appreciate that.
Take care. All right. So thank you. So this is All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Currently with no hip hop, but we are working on that. We are working on that, right? Like to get this back. This is
Wow.
these are the adaptations that we have to make based on COVID. We are expecting our next guest and just at the right time, our next guest is coming in.
I was getting ready to do a musical interlude. I was about to say a hit.
You about to start singing?
He's about to
rap it? All right. So thank you so much. We are very extremely honor today to have Dr. Earl Henderson here, and a big shout out and a thank you to Dr. Kelly Harris for making this connection and for making this suggestion. We knew that we are on King Weekend, and we know that we want to make sure that, on these occasions where we have both, Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday come up, we had the white riots of 2021 last week, we have a transition of government, there's so many different things that are going on. We wanted to have somebody who would be on that would actually, help us break a lot of these things down. And we are so honored today to have Dr. Errol Henderson. He's an associate professor of political science at Penn State University. And he just wrote a book called, well, I'm not sure if he just wrote this book, but he will tell us about, but it's The Revolution Will Not Be Theorized, Cultural Revolution and the Black Power Era. He is an expert in understanding and the theories around Black power politics in our community. Is also an expert in international relations. He's a professor of international relations. And we are so honored to have him on today to be able to talk about what should we be thinking about or concerned with in this time, both at home and abroad and around the world. So thank you so much, Dr. Henderson, for coming on. We are very honored to have you here today.
And Dr. Henderson,
thank you so much.
Just before you start, Jonathan has named January 6th as the white, what riots?
The white riot of 2021, right? Like
the white riot of
2021, right? And you got the year, because white people be rioting all the time. You got to get the right year, the white riot of 2021, or the white trash rebellions, right? The trailer trash rebellions. But I think the second name is probably not as accurate as the first one in terms of all that white supremacy in one room.
And Dr. Henderson, with that being said, would that accurately categorize what happened on January 6th if we had to give it a name?
Oh, well, let me first thank you all for inviting me here, and especially Brother Austin, who I had the opportunity to talk with, and my good brother, Professor Kelly Harris, who's always looking out. He's a wonderful brother, excellent scholar. What you have at the, and I would say I'm not an expert in Black social movements, but in the study of war, that's what I teach in international relations. And I do have, but the book brother so kindly referred to, The Revolution Will Not Be Theorized, is about revolution during the Black Power movement. And the argument that the revolution that's right under our feet, that's so that's so rarely studied, is the slave revolution during the Civil War. I often say white supremacism won't just teach you what to think, it'll teach you how to think. So folks were looking for revolutionary examples from abroad. And one of the big white supremacist lies is that we didn't fight for our liberation right here and provide models that extend to today. So I hope we get a chance to talk about that. I'll come back to that. But directly to your point, dear sister, this was an insurrection. Some of the people that you characterized the way you did were there, but you also had present and former military that were there. These white supremacists organized in the National Guard and Army Reserves. I know something about that, and the U.S. Army. So these are not just a bunch of folks that just piled out of a trailer and showed up. It's coordinated attack on the U.S. Seat of government. And so I think it's so important to put this in its proper context. You had the reports over a decade ago, as Sister Joy Reid was talking about tonight, that argued that the greatest threat of domestic terrorism was from white supremacist groups that were found a home in the U.S. military, local police forces, and sheriff's offices. And this is important to consider, something we've known for a long time. In my international relations courses, I argue that the U.S. is ill-equipped to deal with international terrorism. It doesn't deal well or even adequately with its domestic terrorism. And I trace it back to 1866 in Pulaski, Tennessee, and the founding of the oldest ongoing terrorist organization in the United States, which is the Ku Klux Klan. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry. You said something.
I'm vibing with you. You keep riding.
Zayed's in the tradition of call and response. So
yeah, appreciate that.
Take that.
Okay, I'm with you now.
Isaiah was like,
yes, sir.
Amen,
Yeah.
brother.
Yes, sir. So this is my first time on, so I didn't know how y'all flow. I watched a couple of the previous episode. Okay, so I'm learning. Thank you, Asante Sanders. I appreciate that. So I think it's important to coordinate to talk about this, and also the complicity of white legislatures who are no less white supremacists than their followers. That's how I got elected. In helping to coordinate the attacks on members of the Capitol. You say some of the sisters and brothers in the Congress who are making this plain, or even someone like AOC who made a point that she wasn't even comfortable even sharing her location with her Republican colleagues out of fear that they would disclose her location to them, to the insurrectionists. So this is something that it's so important. Of course, the juxtaposition with what happened with peaceful protests and Black Lives Matter in DC, and the type of armed preparedness that was organized to confront them, as compared to this. Even the white Capitol policeman who said when they dragged him into the crowd, he said at one point they threatened to take my gun and kill me with it. So I had to determine what I was going to do, and he decided not to use his weapon. Now you're surrounded by a white mob, and you decide not to, but you can have a black person fleeing or just walking away from police. It's not a question to use their weapon. They're grabbing their gun, and he decides not to use it. So it's so important we put this in context so we can make a movement. Utilize strategies to take this moment and use it to our advantage. I'll stop there.
And so when you're saying that we want to utilize this movement to our advantage, what do you mean by that? And how can theory? Well, first, what is theory, right? Like, because you talk about you made it very clear that you're like, I'm not a historian. I'm a political scientist. I'm a theorist.
Yes, sir.
Right. And so you made that very clear that you are not a historian. You are not talking about history from that perspective. You are talking about theory because you are a political scientist. What is the distinction? What can you explain to me? What is theory, and why is it important to Black people?
Sure. Okay. I got to grab this here. This is the book. The Revolution Will Not Be Theorized.
I had to pull the weapon out.
It builds on several books, including this one of the often cited but poorly least read books, Black Reconstruction in America. That's Du Bois's book.
Okay.
But what I'm a political scientist. Political scientists, we analyze political phenomena. We simply don't provide narrations of historical events, but we analyze political phenomena. Political phenomena are mainly concerned with issues related to power. Okay, so if you could argue that economists measure wealth and its distribution, or then what wealth is to economics, power is to political science. In particular, I look at international relations, the relations among countries, or any actors that can perform on an international stage, so beyond your own particular state. Theory is very simple. There are different types of theory, and before I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but theory is simply in political science, it's simply the most straightforward definition is for empirical theory. It's a coherent set of what we call law-like regularities, things we see that occur across time and space. It's our conjecture on these law-like generalizations, okay? But better, it's a coherent set, not just idle, something off the top of my head, a coherent set of law-like generalizations that have some three qualities: descriptive, explanatory, and predictive capacity, for which most of their empirical assumptions have already been substantiated. So what does theory do? It describes, explains, and allows us to predict phenomena, okay? It may seem counterintuitive. Go ahead, bro.
And when you're saying phenomena, you're talking about things that, incidents, things that happen, things that—
Sure, incidents, processes, what we occur in the world, in the referent world. That's right. Yes, sir. And so what we want to do is try to explain it. Now, I want to be clear. We're not trying to— there are three types of sciences: physical, biological, and social. In the physical sciences, you can have something as clear cut as E = mc squared. But if you look at the biological sciences, the equations, the relationships get a little more squishy. You think of those types of associations you have in chemistry, where this action will set off this action under these conditions. When the social sciences, we don't have theory that explains X will equal to Y. but we can at least talk about the type of circumstances that occasion certain outcomes. They're often simplistic, but they don't have to. They're often simple, but they don't have to remain that way. Like we know that states that are closer together are more likely to fight each other. That seems that seems intuitive if they're close to. But that's not how we explain war. There in the social sciences, we understand that there are many factors that can lead to a given outcome. What we do reject, and what our analysis shows, that very few outcomes in world politics, international relations, caused by a single thing. For example, international war is not the result of simply economics. That's ridiculous. One of the things I disabuse folks of is monocausal, single cause arguments about what results in war or what factors lead to war. So what I'm talking about here is social theory on revolution. And what I'm arguing is that to have useful social theory, you must first be grounded historically. And I argued in the book, The Revolution Not Be Theorized, is unfortunately during the Black Power movement, and I ain't mad at them. I studied with, learned from, was tutored by many of these folks from the Black Panther Party, who members of my family were involved in, the Republican Africa, most of the groups that I cite in the book, the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, the Congress of African Peoples. So I'm trying to build on their work. And the basic argument is that the under-theorized revolution was the slave revolution of the U.S. Civil War. Many folks don't even believe there was a slave revolution. 196,000 African Americans served in the Union Army and Navy. 186,000 in the Army, 10,000 in the Navy. But there were some 300,000 that also fought in support support capacities. And because what they realized was, and you've heard this old adage that an army travels on its belly. What happens if the slaves stop producing for the Confederacy? You see, this is what Du Bois says. And this is exactly what they did. They orchestrated a general strike. They stopped work to support the Confederacy. But what did they do then? They went to the Union lines. How did they know to go to the Union lines and where they were? We set up the entire apparatus of the Underground Railroad. Underground Railroad based on no magic quilts. It was our organized strategy. And it's the basic premise is this. If folks don't want to get into the details of this, and I'll go wherever you want me to go. We were 4 million black folks in 1860. We're 40 million now. How did that happen? We're not here for the good graces of white people. Our people theorize and they strategize. That's how we got here. David Hilliard, one of the few salient things he said as a member of the Black Panther Party, he was right. He said the white left, they wanted us for our thuggery, but not our theory. Or better, the white abolitionist who tells Frederick Douglass, when Frederick Douglass starts talking about it, he's talking about strategies and theorizing. He says, Mr. Douglass, you provide the history, we'll provide the philosophy. See, because the white folks, of course, did the thinking for us, right? So when it's time to theorize and strategize, often folks will say, well, no, they'll opt for either Marxism or they study in Foucault. And I'm not mad at them. Don't get me wrong. I teach some of these things as they impact on international relations. But our peculiar circumstances in the United States made it necessary that we study the revolution right under our feet, which is the slave revolution during the U.S. Civil War. And that's what I talk about in the book. And I build on Malcolm. Malcolm's the starting point. And I show the strengths and weaknesses of Malcolm's theoretical argument. And one of those weaknesses is what I call in the book, I won't get into here, reverse civilizationism, but I can if you're interested. And that percolated through some of the other analysts. And again, I'm not mad at them. I'm trying to build on their work, you see? So they didn't study from the revolution. Because people, well, are you going to study Gabriel or Nat Turner if I tell you he's some kind of rapist or he just want to be around white women? You know, Nat Turner was one bridge away from reaching the Dismal Swamp. If Reverend Nat had made it to the Dismal Swamp, we still couldn't find him. I'm half joking there. But he was one bridge away. He strategized. You know why he moved and used clubs and knives at the beginning? Because it's at night. He doesn't want to awaken the whites, so they rally their forces against him. But as soon as sunrise comes, he gets horses, put red bandanas on his people, and yell in charge. Just studying it. But if I teach you that Nat Turner is something kind of degenerate, you'll never go to him looking for liberation or a strategy for revolution. In the largest slave revolt in the United States. I'm sorry, the largest successful one, the largest one. Go ahead, brother.
That example is important because I'm old enough to remember the book that came out that tried to do to Nat Turner exactly what you're talking about. right? Done by a liberal white writer, by the way, William Styron, right?
Yes.
He came up with this wild novel about Nat Turner, reducing him to being a sex-lusting slave, lusting for white women in this quest for the so-called quest for freedom. That was his principal driving agent to denigrate,
Yes.
us rightfully identifying with him and with the tools of war that he was using to advance that particular moment. I'm saying that to say that is the importance of every people having the sense, the revolutionary sense, to stand on the shoulders of their ancestors to find a way to figure out which way forward for themselves. Engaging in other ideologies or other places is okay, but it's on the basis of your own space and your own history, your own culture, that you must do that.
So I like the conversation, and I like what you're saying right now in terms of, and I like what you're saying in terms of theory and how you're theorizing, right? Because essentially, what it seems like you're saying is the difference between like a historian and theory is this is all about strategy, and this is all about understanding how did Black people strategize to go from 4 million to 40 million. What were the strategies that were involved in our various political movements for survival?
Well, I appreciate what you said. I get a little trepidation when someone says what I was saying. Well, I was saying what I just said, or when I rarely talk in terms of all or must. I say emphatically, I'm absolutely opposed to absolutes, and I'm dogmatically against dogma. So I argue there's a lot of flexibility in these things. You don't have to do it this way. I just suggest that it's useful to start right at home with the revolution, the revolution that was successful. Who wouldn't start there? See, but for people who face death to even learn to read and write, it stands to reason. And brother is right. Styron's book was something. But I return you to Toni Morrison's famous admonition. The chief purpose of racism is distraction. So we got 10 to 12 authors who talk about Styron. No, I'm not citing these people in this book. I'm citing people who put forth revolution. They will distract you to death to citing every last white supremacist who made a comment on your subject. So you're distracted. So you don't build your theory. You don't go to Du Bois, or then after Du Bois, there's Alain Locke. Or for historians, for example, they want to tell me about, well, brother, don't you know that, in 19, Du Bois saw the commission in the U.S. So what? I don't care. What do I care about that? I'm not trying to marry the man. I'm just trying to take his theory that's useful. I'm not trying to follow him. I'm not looking for somebody to follow. I ain't trying to get a hero. I'm talking about his argument. But a historian will get into the details about it. I'm not knocking that. But that's not what I'm doing. And meanwhile, these white supremacists and the Negroes that support them and the other folks, non-whites who support them, they'll constantly say, well, brother, you talking about Harold Cruz's argument for Cultural Revolution. They said, well, Harold Cruz said some derogatory things about Lorraine. What do I do? Meanwhile, they're citing Marxist theorists like Althusser. Althusser is a Marxist theorist. He killed his wife. Literally, he killed his wife. They still quote Althusser. Guy, you and me talking about, okay, which one you going to take? W.E.B. Du Bois or Booker T. Washington? You only get one. You only get one. Who are you going to take? Martin or Malcolm? You only get one. Meanwhile, they take all of that. Just like the founding fathers, they call them. They take them all. Got you and me preoccupied with nitpicking. I build on the revolutionary thesis of whoever's talking about revolution is Black, that's grounded in Black communities and Black culture, and see the importance of Black culture in a cultural revolution to stimulate a political revolution. And that's what I argue in the book, went on during the Civil War, building on Du Bois, integrating it with Locke, and showing how slave hiring facilitated this, and then applying it to the Black Power movement and showing how the different organizations, they dealt with this too. They just didn't complete it, or they had some particular miscues or failings. Again, I'm not mad at them. I'm trying to build on them. I listened to them and they told me where the disconnects were. And it's also evident today. So for example, we're organizing up here at State College, Pennsylvania. You can't get much whiter than this place. It only gets some tan to it when the Black folks come in and school's back in session. But the first police killing in State College, Pennsylvania, was of a Black man, Osage Osage, who, after his father had asked for a welfare check on him. The first killing. So with so few black people here, how in the world the first police killing in history is a black man? Well, you know how white supremacism worked. They wouldn't even release the police's the names. And we've been organizing here. And there's an excellent organization called the 320 Coalition. Sister Nanre, Sister Nanre Nafziger, Sister Tierra Williams, and then also Melanie Morrison and Maggie Hernandez among the leadership there. And what people have done is to organize here. Black Lives Matter. You got white folks around here carrying Black Lives Matter. We had a couple thousand people in the streets in the State College, Pennsylvania, in the summertime, and it's going on as well. And so this is what we're doing right here. But let me share with something I say some of the protests. I said, now I want to say this to some of the white folks here. So they know how I talk and they know how I am. So they think it's going to be something, well, they imagine. I said, some of the white folks here, I said, Freedom Summer 1964. For strategic reasons, whites were invited to come to the South to organize with blacks in Freedom Summer 1964. Right. I say to the white folks here, nobody invited you here, but you came anyway during a pandemic. Don't you go home and let anybody at home who didn't join you today, they know who I'm talking about, their parents, their white parents, white friends, white relatives, minimize what you're doing today. Why? Because the importance of a black cultural revolution is a simultaneous white cultural revolution at the same time. So you have whites deciding what kind of white you gonna be. You gonna be a white supremacist like the Trump folks and their supporters, or you gonna be more in line of Viola Liuzzo and Marilyn Buck? You see what I'm saying? White folks who fought for a black liberation. You see what I'm saying? It's a choice you can make. Isn't this what happened during the Civil War? You had Confederates and their associates and white abolitionists. Folks, I mean, it strikes me when I hear ignorant Negroes talking about, well, that's what they do to us. They just divide and conquer. That's what they do to. You know, we've divided as well. Whites were divided, and that's when we struck. And if you listen to what William Webb and others are arguing, you'll see that was a choice they made. That's why they moved in 1861-62 and not during the previous administration. William Webb talks about that. If you don't know, he's an escaped slave who wrote about these things. Yeah. But if we're convinced that we got no victories, we don't even go looking for William Webb's. We rarely look for Harriet Tubman. Enough of us don't. I don't like saying we when it's something negative. We've been the moral vanguard of this country. We define freedom, liberty, and justice and equality in this country. We define familyhood and education in this country. So let me be clear about that, because it also strikes me when I hear Negroes say we and the next thing out of their mouth is something negative. Rarely we, the moral vanguard, those things I just said. So I want to be clear about that. But how did we know to go to those Union lines when they was turning us back? You see? Because we strategized. Booker T. Washington talked about it, and I'm from Detroit, Motown, right? So you know I got to put this in. Booker T. Washington was strategized. He said, how did the slaves know that? He said they learned through the grapevine telegraph. And yes, that's where it comes from. Heard it through the grapevine. The grapevine telegraph. Booker T. Washington's talking about that in his first autobiography. I just want to put that in.
Well, now I'm just going to want you. You said a lot, man. You said a lot of really good stuff. And I would want you to break some stuff down, especially some of the initialist stuff that you talked about with theory. One of the things that you said is that the first, you talked about the theory that came from the Civil War, and then you talked about, and you put it together with theory that came from Du Bois. Can you break down what is the theory that you can give us that came from what happened and how Black people united during the Civil War?
And notice, I didn't say Black folks united now. I said they organized. We show me anywhere, and it's laid out in the book. That's why it's 500 pages. I actually say, why is the book so long? As if, okay, so I'm talking about how Blacks thought this and strategized. This should be a little pamphlet. And that strikes me too. These people write these little pamphlets about, again, the form follows the function. But nevertheless, that don't mean length is quality either. So don't get me wrong. But I don't want to hearken too much on theory. It's more how folks are thinking of theory in a popular way. Though I define it and I differentiate different types of theory: empirical, normative, and critical. But theory is in a nutshell. If you force me to give, say, if I was talking back in the Brewster Projects where I'm from in Detroit, on the east side of Detroit, I say theory is our conception of how the world works and how we can make it work certain ways. You know, you can think of it like that. You don't have to have a technical definition. But what's key about theory is your strategy comes out of your theory. If you got an idea of how the world works, then your strategy will probably reflect that. And out of your strategy comes, let's just jump to a military one, okay? What we call your doctrine. Your doctrine says, advises whether you're more oriented toward offensive operations. That is, you want to take territory, you want to take people, you want to on your initiative. And I'm doing this because it usually means you're moving out, or it's a defensive one. That is, you want to hold territory, you want to hold people, you want to maintain what you have. Well, an offensive strategy would be a strategy oriented toward maneuver, to move out, surround, encircle your opponent, and roll them up on their flanks, their left and rights. That's very different from a defensive strategy, which speaks to not moving out so much, but holding on to something. So think about the Black Panther Party for self-defense. So how are you going to wage a revolution in the United States, a political revolution, a political military revolution, with a defensive doctrine? Well, you can't successfully. And that is a disconnect, you see? If you want to revolution, if anything, is offensively oriented. Now, don't get it confused with a guerrilla warfare strategy, which is also offensive, but it includes a protracted, a long struggle that includes includes bypassing the military forces that are raged against you, use ambushes, etc., but to go to the populations of your opponent. The idea of capturing hearts and minds, but also to attack them, you see? So guerrilla warfare is a different strategy. There are three main types of strategy: maneuver, attrition, punishment. But my main point is that your strategy comes out of your theory, or better, your strategy in the military sense comes out of your doctrine, whether we're going to be offensively oriented or defensively oriented. And you know it just on the street. You out there to try to, run up on somebody, or you just saying like, man, don't mess with me. Just let me leave. As long as I can leave, I'm okay. Yeah, I'll be all that. All that's okay. Just as long as I can leave. Now, if I'm not allowed to leave, I will vigorously defend myself until I'm under no more threat. And if that threat means you're not existing anymore, so be it. But that's a defensive orientation, you see? An offensive one will be going out and attacking, see? That comes out of that should come out of your theory. Much of this during the Black Power movement just came out of their practice. So if you listen to revolutionary leaders like Sekou Odinga, if you listen to revolutionary leaders like Robert Williams, or revolutionary leaders like Safiu Buhari, you see, you'll get a sense of the theory they practice the theory that they acknowledge and operate under from their practice. Why? They didn't have time to do this. That's one of the reasons why I wrote it. You know what I'm saying? It's building on this work. It's talking to these folks over many years. And some of them, the people I mentioned, several of them are past. And we should remember that. So when we have people like Sundiata Acoli, one of our political prisoners, 80 years old now, still in captivity, or Ruchell Magee, who's done a half a century in captivity in the case that brought Angela Davis to national, international attention. He's still in captivity. Our theory guides what we're strategizing, and of course, out of our strategy comes our programs and things. And so that's what I lay out in the book. But let me give you a sense of when I talk about this it's not miseducation. Again, what the old heads tell us: people who won't treat you right won't teach you right. So I got to go back to the Civil War and the slave revolution. I'm not just using that. If you look at what even at Jefferson Davis, at contemporary Southern papers, he said, my slaves are in revolt. That's what he says. I believe that's verbatim. You can get that from a book called, I got all the sources in here, Confederate Reckoning by, I'm blocking on her name, the scholar who wrote that. Or Steve Hines, A Nation Under Their Feet. A Nation Beneath Their Feet. Steve Hines made these arguments. He said the slave revolution in the United States is in many ways more important than the Haitian Revolution. He wrote that in the book, this book. Yeah, A Nation Under Their Feet. That's Steve Hines, A Nation Under Their Feet. He's writing that there. They gave him a Pulitzer Prize for that. He won a Pulitzer Prize for that in 2004. Du Bois say damn near the same thing in 1935. They ignore it or they trash it. Both mainstream academia and the Marxist left, the white left, trashed his book. You see? So if I won't treat you right, I'm not going to teach you right. And I'm definitely not going to tell you where to go get your victories, because you may try to apply them again. But let me make this real down-to-earth understanding of the importance of the slave revolution. Look here. If you are from, well, Brother Kelly from Philly. Okay, from Philly. So Joe Frazier, smoking Joe Frazier. So Joe Frazier, heavyweight champion, right? Joe Frazier win the heavyweight championship in the ring, okay? Just, which he did too, but he wins the heavyweight championship in the ring. But just say you win the heavyweight championship in the ring. You got the heavyweight belt, right? You, on your way home, somebody mug you, they rob you, and take your belt. But brother, sister, you still a heavyweight champion. Just because they robbed you and took your belt, you still a heavyweight champion. So many people will say, Brother Errol, how do you learn from the Civil War when we lost Reconstruction? But we won the war. Just because we lost 12 years later don't mean you can't draw lessons from the victory. See, this is the super trick to convince you got no history, you got no victories, you got nothing to draw on. You see? So that's what I'm pushing against. I hope I answered at least some of what you asked me, brother.
And that leaves and why that's important is because that leaves us forever dependent on someone else, right? And if we don't break that chain, right? Malcolm said the best thing I can teach you is to teach you to think for yourself. Right, we will forever be in the defensive position. At some point, I do want to go on offense.
Yeah, I can't speak on forever and all that. I'm not smart enough to know that, but I know Malcolm argued that he argued for a cultural revolution to, as he said, unbrainwash a whole generation of people.
Right.
Malcolm integrated his political revolution that you hear, for example, in Message to the Grassroots, with his notion of a cultural revolution. Malcolm never developed his thesis on the cultural revolution, where we know 5 members of the Nation of Islam, along with local police and the U.S. intelligence agency, killed him before he turned 40.
That's right.
So when I talk about Malcolm and revolution, I'm not talking about nothing abstract, but to build. And that's what I want you to see. The theory you're talking about is not abstract, but in practice. And I argue, but Malcolm made a critical error. His critical error was when he argued, remember he made famous, he said, you asked what you left in Africa. You left your mind in Africa. He took that a little too literally. You see, black nationalists like all the way back to Henry Highland Garnet, Martin Delany, they argued that Africans were sort of benighted. They were less civilized. Now, they didn't make the white supremacist argument of that, but they did see African Americans going to Africa to, among other things, civilize the Africans. We call that civilizationism. But they were talking about the spread of technology, including technology of war, but also different types of Western type literacy and things like that, and Western religion as well. Now, it's Du Bois who debunks this notion. Du Bois says not only do Africans, he says Africans have a history, and Africa is the first, if not the first civilization. Du Bois is arguing this. But watch where he goes from there. He says not only do Africans are the progenitors of civilizations, and he goes to ancient Kemet, all through the West, and he this is an excellent Du Bois book, The World in Africa. Okay.
Yes.
But he then says that African Americans have a culture. Not only do African Americans have a culture, talking about in the body politic. So he's not talking about Native Americans, okay? But within the body politic of U.S., not only African Americans have a culture, we have the only authentically American culture. That is, the European American culture that's just it. It's derivative of Europe. That so-called classical music, that European classical music. He said, what's the sorrow songs, the spiritual, and eventually you get jazz, the blues, and the whole nine. But Du Bois is saying this in 1903. Once he said that, if Africans have a culture, and matter of fact, they have civilization, many cultures, and civilizations back to antiquity, they don't need you to civilize them. Much less, they don't need no civilizing, and much less civilizing from African Americans. See, but African Americans also don't need no. We need to cultivate our own culture here, and he saw it as part of a folk culture and increasingly urbanized culture. That's 1903, right? Malcolm reverses that. Remember, Malcolm says Africans have. My paraphrase of Malcolm now. When I quote him, I just say it, but this is my paraphrase. He says Africans were more advanced in their revolutionary struggle. They're not fighting for a seat at a lunch counter. They fighting for sovereignty. They fighting for nationhood. They want some land. That's what they're fighting for. He said Africans are ahead of African Americans. So African Americans need to follow Africans. You see how it's reversed? In the 19th century, black nationalists were saying African Americans were ahead and we needed to civilize the Africans. Malcolm is saying Africans are ahead and African Americans need to follow them. He reversed it, but that was an error. What African Americans needed to do was to study the revolution right under their feet. That Malcolm was actually theorizing when he said a cultural revolution seemed to be associated with a political revolution. That's what Du Bois says. He doesn't say it, but when I build on Du Bois, he implies it. He says something was happening in the slave quarters that moved their religion from one that suggested docility, that one to suggest bringing God's will on this earth and revolution. That's what Nat Turner was. Gabriel's a religious guy. He's also a blacksmith. Denmark Vesey's a religious guy. That's the church that the white supremacists shot up, right? He's a religious guy, but he's a tradesman. He's actually a freeman at that time from winning the lottery. But Nat Turner is just a regular field hand, but he's a preacher. So it allows him to go around to the different slave plantations. But Nat Turner ain't talking Old Testament. He talking New Testament. He talking Jesus as a revolutionary black Messiah long before Jaramogi. And of course, you know, I talk about Jaramogi and the Shrine of Black Madonna in this one as well. But Nat Turner, and remember what Nat Turner, they thought he was some kind of zip coon, which is more accurate than calling somebody a Tom, because Uncle Tom was actually a heroic figure in the actual book. But a zip coon is not. That's Samuel L. Jackson in Django Unchained, zip coon. The other slaves were calling Nat Turner a zip coon. Why? Because he escaped and came back. One of the best lessons Malcolm taught us. People quote by any means necessary are taught completely out of context. But what Malcolm said, rock them to sleep. Rock them to sleep. And that's what Nat Turner did. He escaped and came back. So he's the last person they're looking at to be involved in a slave revolt. And he only told 5 people? I think it was 4. Because he learned from Gabriel in Denmark and Gabriel's name wasn't Gabriel Prosser, it was just Gabriel. He learned from Gabriel in Denmark because their planned revolts were exposed. That's what he would have succeeded. Right. One bridge away. Nat Turner, one bridge away. You see? So this is what I mean. When I'm talking about theory, it's not the abstract, it's to put it right in practice so we can build on those errors. And I argue in the Black Power book, the ones that come closest to it was both the Shrine of the Black Madonna and the League of Revolutionary Black Workers. The one that comes closest, if you force me, and among the ones I analyzed, from RAM to us, the Black Panther Party, the RNA, the Congress of African People, to the Shrine, to the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, it was the League of Revolutionary Black Workers. They captured the sense of the Black urban culture. We didn't have to go learn Swahili. We didn't have to learn Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. If you want to learn that, cool. But you can just do it, Our Father who art in heaven. You can stay right in your church and do it. You see what I'm saying? Just what Malcolm was saying. Remember, Malcolm was more secular oriented in his revolutionary thesis. There's nothing Nation of Islam and messing with the grassroots. That's revolutionary theory. That's right. Which he gave in Detroit in 1963, and Ballad of the Bullet as well.
Professor Henderson, yes. We have a comment, and I just wanted you to hear the comment. It says, I love the presentation, but I don't see Malcolm looking to Africa as a mistake, particularly in the context and time in which he said it.
Party and a member of the Black Liberation Army who was also a prisoner. She says this.
We lost some in your beginning. I think you were cut off. So if you can just start again.
Yes. And who am I talking with now?
Donna. But I was reading a comment from the audience.
May I call you that, Sister Donna? That's Sister Donna?
Yes, sir.
Oh, Asante. Sister Donna, and thank you so much. Sister Donna, I was saying that Safia Bukhari was a member of the Black Panther Party, a member of the Black Liberation Army, and a political prisoner. And she said this. This is close to verbatim. You should be familiar with this. She said, there is no capture of any of us as political prisoners that can't be traced to a mistake we made. That's what Safia said.
That's right.
In the context for applying to the question, you should first be prepared to talk about mistakes and critique from a position of appreciation and understanding of overall struggle. I don't have enough time tonight or in many nights to talk about my admiration of Minister Malcolm. There's not enough time for me. So I hope you would appreciate that and read the book, which I want to be clear. That book is free. I made that book free. It's free online. I hope you will put that out. You don't have to buy that book. That's part of growing up in the Brewster Projects. My book is free. My last 2 books are free online. And these books are published by university presses. So when people say, well, you got to get the truth, you can't get the truth. Use these folks to use whatever tools we have for our liberation. Okay. So you can get the book free. I want to be clear on that. And if you can't, and if you want a PDF, just send me, I'll send it to you. Okay. So I want to be clear. So I'm not just putting you off to the book. So I don't make a mistake in his life. I'm talking about in his formulation. It's one thing Malcolm often said. He says an open texture to his knowledge. He's constantly open to critique. And that's why he said, we'll call on students of political science, verbatim. That's what he said. He'll call on students of political science to offer us their analysis. And that's why I take it serious. Building on him. Malcolm died over a half-century ago. You mean we can't understand, appreciate mistakes that made a half-century ago? You see what I'm saying? So this mistake, I'm with you, whoever said this question. I understand why they did it at the time. It's an African liberation struggle. It looks like it's going to be transformed. But check this out. If you'll just go and read this, read Malcolm's diary as you're going through Africa. Malcolm calling out some of them zip code African leaders who he see they're more oriented in pissing off the United States than actually developing the revolutionary struggle he's trying to be involved in. Read what Malcolm writes in his diary during his trip to Africa, because I study Malcolm seriously. So it's not Malcolm's turn to Africa. That's important. He put it in his theoretical argument, though, and led him to do what? Follow me now. Led him to base his revolutionary theory on what was going on in South Africa, what was going on in Algeria following Fanon, what was going on in Guinea-Bissau with Amilcar Cabral, what was going on in Mozambique with respect to Frelimo. See, brother, see this, I teach African international relations. This is my book 3 books ago, African Realism, International Relations Theory and Africa's Wars in the Post-Colonial Era. So I'm real familiar with Africa's wars during the time that Malcolm's writing. That's why I say I ain't mad at him. He's looking at the Vietnam War. He's looking at Cuba. But you tell me this. There's nowhere in the world that replicates the position of African Americans in these respects. We were situated not in some, and I don't mean this disparaging, but let me just put this in. We aren't in some third world backwater, some underdeveloped country that can be easily toppled by its neighbors, much less its former colonial powers. That's not where we were. We were in the most powerful country in the world. We also don't have primary land claims here. We have land claims, and that's part of our reparations argument. We have land claims, but they're secondary in places because Native Americans owned enslaved Africans too. Some Native Americans did, but by and large, the land claims are primary for Native Americans. That's not what you have in Africa. Those people fighting their own land that they're standing on. And even if you concede those things, we're a numerical minority in the place, and that was rare in any of the colonial spaces. So I want you to appreciate that. I'm not saying he made a mistake because I'm trying to find some kind of error or that BS stuff like Marable wrote, talking about he want to humanize Malcolm when he really just wants to make a soft white leftist critique of Malcolm. Don't want to call it that. His whole book, Malcolm said his most important theorizing in the last part of his life, the role of the cultural revolution and the political revolution and what he saw as a worldwide revolution. Right. He don't even mention the words cultural revolution in that book on Malcolm. He don't even mention it. You see? So I want you to appreciate when I say mistake. I'm not saying this guy made a mistake. I don't even like ending with a mistake. It's just a tactical error that became strategic when other people simply adopted it uncritically. So when us organization is talking about we need a culture that's based on Africa, no, there's nothing wrong with that. And that can be beautiful, often is, but it's not a necessity. The beauty of revolution is you can stay right there working at your library, working in your church, and we're gonna make revolution. As you study revolution, you see that's exactly what they did. Rock them to sleep. You see what I'm saying?
What is the organization that you said was most effective again? And
I want to be clear.
Talk to us about that, or the one that you highlighted.
I have separate sections on each one of the ones that I mentioned, RAM, and I do them in order of their adoption of cultural revolution as part of their platform argument. or even their resistance to it. So RAM, us, of course Malcolm, the OAU and Muslimas Incorporated, but RAM, us, the Black Panther Party, the Republic of New Africa, the Congress of African Peoples, Shrine of the Black Madonna, the Pan-Africanist Orthodox Christian Church, the League of Revolutionary Black Workers. And what may seem counterintuitive to many of you, because I'm not a Marxist, for example, but I study enough Marx as a political scientist, they saw themselves as a Black Marxist organization. And I would argue, but I asked General Baker, one of the heads, who I knew for about 20 years. I asked General Baker, and General, he's such a revolutionary, and he's so honest. He said, Brother Earl, we really didn't study Marx. We didn't study it after we folded. See, he's honest like that, okay? Well, what made them come closest? Because they took the brothers and sisters off the block, what the Panthers thought they were doing, and the ones in the union shop. Remember, the League of Revolutionary Black Workers started to organize in the unions in and around Detroit. They start in Highland Park. Highland Park, there are two cities within the geographic borders of Detroit. Highland Park, where Henry Ford made his first assembly line, and Hamtramck, which is a large Polish enclave, so Polish that the Polish Pope actually visited Hamtramck when he came here, the first Polish Pope. So the League organized a group called the Dodge Revolutionary Union Movement. They gained control of the student newspaper at Wayne State University called the South End. That's no slight thing. That was the third largest, that paper had the third largest circulation of all the papers in Michigan, not just in Detroit, in Michigan. Brother put 2 Black Panthers on the masthead of the student newspaper. It said, one conscious worker is worth 100 students, okay? So they're in the plants. And for Detroit, the plants are a seminal reality, okay? So they organize in unions in the plants, but Sister Marion Kramer, who years later would marry General Baker, but they weren't married then, she argued that as we do the in-plant organizing, it was important that we do out-of-plant organizing too. So look at what they're doing. They're going to organize not just a strike action in the plant, but coordinate it through the community, through churches, schools. They had the Black student unions in the high schools, different types of cultural centers, of course, and different type of religious institutions outside. What are they talking about? And what do they call it? A general strike. That's what they say. The same language
Du Bois
that their ancestors had used 100 years ago,
right.
even when they weren't studying them. That's the beauty of what we're doing when we ground ourselves in our actual African-American culture and practice. We resonate. Why? Because the conditions are similar. The revolution of the slavery, it was successful. Check me out. It overthrew the economic system, the social economic system of chattel slavery. We destroyed that. People say silly things like, well, slavery was ended everywhere except prison. No, chattel slavery was ended and destroyed. The 13th Amendment ended it, chattel slavery. The 14th Amendment, which made citizens or imposed citizenship, according to the RNA, on all people in the citizens of the United States, that meant that nobody was chattel. So even in prison. So in prison, you can be on death row. If you have a baby, they don't send your baby to the cotton fields. Your baby don't go back to death row. You're not chattel. And a part of this comes from minimizing our actual struggle. We overthrew chattel slavery. We were successful at that. White supremacists then concocted another form. Is that right? They concocted something else. It's somewhere back here. There you go. Du Bois called it the peonage system, but you know this piece, slavery by another name. But I don't like minimizing slavery. Slavery was slavery. There's nothing that's like it, a chattel slavery. I don't like us minimizing our things. So you'll never hear me say foolishness like, today I'm working on a plantation. Out of respect to those who did. To put this in context, how many people you see making, well, I ain't going to do that. Just going to stay on my own. But you probably saw where I was going. Who make jokes about, this today, I just got off this concentration camp. But some white supremacists will teach black folks to minimize our struggle. I don't make passing jokes about slavery. There's no joke about it. It's the largest unresolved issue of social justice in this country, and it's a crime against humanity. You know, we came up with that too. George Washington Williams, a black Civil War veteran, fought for his freedom. He coined that term when he was observing the Belgian Congo, on a trip to the Belgian Congo. He saw what was happening, and he called it crimes against humanity. Okay. So, but let me make sure I'm focused. Oh, brother, I think I lost my track. You
were talking first about the League of Revolutionary Black Workers.
Oh yes. Oh, sorry.
You were talking about like what made them stand out.
Yes, sir. So they're actually replicating, Brother Austin, the general strike strategy, even though they didn't study. Why? Because the conditions remain. So we successfully overthrew the social economic system of the economic system at minimum of chattel slavery. We destroyed that. We overthrew that, right? I'm not talking about what came next. First, just credit for your victories. We overthrew that. We also successfully overthrew this is what made it a political revolution, the Confederate States of America. Remember, at the beginning of the war, neither side, Union or Confederacy, had as one of its initial war aims the eradication of slavery. What did they just got Jesus? No, we made them change that. Lincoln admits as much. The notion that Frederick Douglass shared with Lincoln, which Lincoln announced at Gettysburg. After Gettysburg, the victory at Gettysburg allowed Lincoln to do what he was too tenuous in doing before. The North was not fighting to end slavery, and Lincoln said as much at the outset, and that's what was evident in the Emancipation Proclamation as well. And clearly the South wasn't, right? Who got him there? Frederick Douglass. Wilson Moses has an excellent piece on Frederick Douglass, and Frederick Douglass imbued in Lincoln a sense that you could remake the United States. This what makes the Civil War itself a revolution. What makes it a revolution? Well, Lincoln argues that Lincoln challenges the foundational documents of the United States. The foundational documents of the United States up till the Civil War was, I won't say always, but overwhelmingly was the Constitution, 1789. It wasn't the Declaration of Independence. Folks didn't look at that as the foundational document, the way it's done now. That's going to come later. And there's an excellent piece by this brother here. I'm not going to find it. Where did I find it? It's a book called, wow, there's an excellent book on Jefferson that's so important. I have to find it, written by Wilson Moses. And he shows you how Jefferson was more like Trump. It's an excellent book. Wilson Moses, one of the leading scholars, and there you go. This book here, you got to check this out. And Wilson Moses, you'll see him throughout my book because he's one of the most, he called him a modern Prometheus. You've seen this Wilson Moses name because he's wrote some of the best work on nationalism. And he don't like nationalism, but he's such an excellent historian that he makes the point. Black nationalism is the first ideology of black people on this soil. It's not derivative of American nationalism, Zionism, French nationalism. It's the first form of nationalism, the first ideology of African Americans on this soil in America. That's Wilson Moses.
Genuinely based on our experience. That's right. We read about that.
I didn't hear that. What folks said.
Oh, you were saying amen again.
You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, that was I saying amen again. You were saying.
Oh, got you. I got to catch the rhythm of it. Can't catch the rhythm of the stroke. The P-Funk or something. I got to get music going, and I'll catch the rhythm of it. All right. But so those two successors. So I'm sorry. Back to Gettysburg. So it was Douglass that said. And both the Union and the Confederacy knew that the Constitution is a slave document. That's a slave document. Absolutely. And when I hear people talk about how you be racist without talking about racism, there's nothing about race in the Constitution, and that's a slave document, right? It established slavery. I mean, it codified slavery, right? So what happened? So listen to Lincoln. Listen to Lincoln now, Gettysburg, 7 years ago. Well, what's 7 years ago? Well, the score is 20 years. That's 87 years. What's 87 years from 1863 when he makes the Emancipation? I'm sorry, when he makes the Gettysburg Address. Well, that's 1776. Right. Frederick Douglass convinced him that can become the basis of a new nation. Mm-hmm. And here we're talking about recognizing these self-evident rights that, when Jefferson wrote them were anything but self-evident. But Lincoln can do it. He's going to say this country was founded on equality, the equality of people. It's a complete lie. So is this how does Lincoln get away with it? Well, he gets away with it because he got the Union Army. That's how. It reminds me of a saying attributed to Napoleon, who once confronted with opposition from the Pope. He said the Pope disagreed with Napoleon on some policy, etc. Napoleon's response was, "How many battalions does the Pope have?" You see? How did Lincoln remake the United States? He had the Union Army. That's how. And that's why and I know 7 years ago. And we walking around like the Declaration of Independence actually has some authority as a foundational document. It doesn't. It's the Constitution. But Lincoln changed that. And that's what makes it a revolution based on the equality of people. The Confederates were right. They were right. The United States was not established as a free society. We all know that, right? But
is that what you mean by like when you have Frederick Douglass and you're talking about Frederick Douglass in that way, when you're saying that black people have separated white people? In other words, we look at white people playing divide and conquer, and you're saying the way in which Frederick Douglass talked to Abraham Lincoln was a way in which he was using one set of white people with armies against another one to free black people.
That's it exactly, Brother Austin. And it's from Douglas's own acumen, his skill. Again, what it sounds like, his theory, his strategizing. Oh my God, Douglas strategized, right? If folks actually read his autobiography, to read what he writes, I mean, it's powerful. But so is Harriet Tubman, so is Robert Small, so is William Webb, so is the brother. What's his name? The Vigilante Society. They call it the Vigilante Society. All it was organized the Underground Railroad. William Steele. Right. Or like Brother Harper or what's his name? The abolitionist with arms. The wonderful sister Kelly. Last name is Carter, if I remember correct. But she wrote on black abolitionists on the front of it. You see a weapon. It looks like a pistol. We have black abolitionists who argue that they were going to protect and fight. Look at the battle in Christiana, where black folks fought. We don't stop picking up the gun with the Panther Party or the Deacons for Defense.
Professor
Henderson, go ahead. I'm sorry.
We're coming to the end, and so people are had some questions for you, and you have to answer them very succinct in like 45 to 30 seconds, because we have a final question that we have to ask you. And then I have one, but I'm going to tie it all in. But
ask your question, Donna. Go ahead and ask
your
question.
I just want to read what the audience said. I'll defer to the audience. Principal Cofelli said, "What are your thoughts on the UNIA?" And Desmond Smith, he just said this was a great program, wonderful contest. You could read that. So I just wanted that to be heard. I'm going to let Jonathan, you ask the final question, but Professor Henderson, we asked the question at the top of the show, and it's always perplexing to me, especially under this president, when you look in the audience, and especially at this latter part of his term, and you see somebody that looks like me in the audience. I struggle with it all the time. Do you have anything to say with that, sir?
Yes. Nowhere. I appreciate what you asked this sister, and I'm going to respond to your question right away. Show me anywhere in the world where 40 million people are unified about anything. Where 40 million people spread over 1 million square miles. People, that's part of self-determination. Your self-determination, you can choose to be enslaved if you want to, but I don't feel obligated to nobody who just because they share my exquisite tan, and I ain't losing no sleep over it. Revolutions are motivated not by unified people. Unity is an illusion, just committed cadres oriented to some form of liberation, and in my context, self-determination. So I ain't missing no beat, missing no sleep over it. Just like the people I'm talking about, there was still some 3 million enslaved Africans that didn't join the others. So I'm not sweating that. Revolution don't work like that. Okay. So to the question, the UNIA, just much too broad. I was a member of the UNIA. That was division number 407, I believe, in Detroit. I actually mentioned them in the dedication in the revolution, because I learned from Brother Leroy Jackson, Sister Ruth Smith. So you'll see and appreciate my understanding of UNIA in the book. But also, I agree with Moses when he says Garvey had 1 foot in the 19th century, 1 foot in the 20th century. And he's talking about, he kept parts of this civilizationism that looked upon the Africans as someone that needed to be governed by people in the diaspora for that. But he also looked at a federated African state, that's more dia, but a unified Africa to impose imperialism. So he was very anti-imperialism in that sense, okay? So, and it's so important that we look, like I said, I'm not looking for a hero. I want to analyze this. Why? Because I actually want to do these things and build on it, okay? Look at what I've been doing here at Penn State. Look up being black at Penn State, okay? And see how I engage right here. Because I can't come to you talking about this revolution. Say, what are you doing where you are, Brother Henderson? That's why I talked to you about our organizing the state college, the 320 coalition, and the murder, the police murder of Osage right here, organizing right here. And I'm from Detroit. I ain't used to organize all these white folks, but we got to have a strategy to organize them. And it's still a lot of black folks, and a lot of black folks in the leadership as well. I want to be clear about that. But also in my own department. in my own college, in my own university. Check me out, being black at Penn State. Okay, so so I want to be clear on that. So the UNIA, I engage it there, and also Harry Haywood. I said I'm not a Marxist, but I developed Haywood. Harry Haywood had respect for the notion of a black nation, and he talks about the black belt thesis. Okay, so he builds at the same time with Garvey. And he's telling these folks on the white left that Garvey ain't no fool. Garvey is worth studying, and what he's tapping into is important. Harry Haywood is saying this in the 1920s, and I'm listening to Harry Haywood at Wayne State University in Detroit in the early 1980s. He actually lives with members of the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, John Watson, in his in Detroit in the late 60s. And I just talked to his widow, who's over 100 years old, Gwendolyn Midlow Hall, and I mentioned her in the book too. So these things are hidden in plain sight. They're there, and I reject when you talk to professors and others. They say it's just so hard doing this. This is different, but it's not difficult. Working in the plant, that can be difficult. Working in them phosphate mines and some of them orange groves in Florida, that can be difficult. I mean, this ain't difficult. It's just a question of when you put forth the effort. And these people out here trying to, you can't be writing what Dr. Ben wrote 60 years ago. You haven't advanced past that. And when I say advanced past, I mean you build on it, you move. I mean, but you still articulate or quoting something about, and that's come from me. And I've already said something about 100 years ago. Sister said 45 minutes. Let me stop. What's next question, sister? I'm gonna be more succinct.
We've actually run out of time. We've actually run out of time.
Sorry.
But it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. We're gonna have you back. That's all, right? Like we're just gonna have to have you back because there's some questions I wanted to ask you too. Because you know your theory, what you were talking about, has been excellent, and I've learned a lot. And it brought about more questions. I'm glad that the book is for free, and I appreciate that the book that you wrote that is a university pressed. The revolution will not be theorized: cultural revolution in the Black Power era, and how that is a work of political science and theory. I appreciate all of that. The final question that we have for you, though, is a question that we ask all of our guests. We are out of time, so it's a very brief answer of this question. We are All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Even though we've been shining light on the hip hop since COVID. Who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group?
Oh, that's too hard. I wrote a paper called Black Nationalism and Rap Music. It's published in 1996. But if you force me to say one, I just gotta, just one.
You can
say what comes to your mind. Say what comes to your mind.
Right? Like you just throw it out.
If somebody said, say what come to your mind. What came to my mind was Kool Herc.
Okay.
Because you said favorite. You didn't talk about the style, the flow, the musicianship, the qualities of a DJ. You said my favorite. Because if it wasn't for Herc, we wouldn't be here.
So the two things we figured out from this: one, we need to have you back on to talk more about how your theory applies to us today, what we can learn from it. I definitely am probably going to be talking to you also, right? Because as I told you, I'm a debate coach, and a lot of stuff that you said is very relevant to the stuff that we do. So thank you on that as well. But you also let me know that we're going to have you back to talk about hip hop. And to talk about what are the theoretical implications that we can draw from it in terms of like what is your thinking. So thank you so much.
And Detroit hip hop, because it don't start with Eminem. I talk about Chaos and Maestro and Austin Gray and the Hardcore Committee. I talk about Amir the Merciless. We got to talk about that.
So don't start with Eminem. That's good.
He ain't from Detroit. He's from across 8 Mile.
Thank you. You blew up the mic again.
Gotta talk about Mike Fresh and other. Yes. So I'll be back if y'all have me, and I promise, Sister Donna, I'll be succinct.
Thank you so much.
More time. We know.
Exactly. So that's why we have more. We have the show every Friday. We will definitely have you back. Is there anything that you want to end on, Donna or Zaid?
Well, I mean, some of those folks he's naming I know personally, and I really appreciate you studying them, because not enough of us have done that. You study. I named my biological child after Safi Bukhari, right? Safi Bukhari was we put the Black Panther newspaper back out under her. We started the Jericho movement under her. You understand, right? She was the vice president and the minister of defense for the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa. I did my citizenship. I took my oath under South people because I love the hell out of her, right? And so, you know, I'm a Panther Cup, so you know, you right for it.
Right.
I'm to the people.
So the only thing I'm going to say is that, this is Dr. King week. This is the weekend we honor Dr. Martin Luther King. Two great things going on in our community. People's Organization for Progress will be doing their march. It's on Monday.
Oh,
Tomorrow the march is, and then
tomorrow 12 noon Lincoln Monument, and we have a delegation coming for Sundiata Acoli, a clergy delegation coming for Sundiata because we're launching a new campaign to fight for his release. He's been inside for 47 years, 84 years old yesterday. Time has come to bring Sundiata home.
All right, Donna.
And up on the screen is the local chapter of the Omega Psi Phi. They do an excellent breakfast every year. Every Martin Luther King weekend, I am at this breakfast. This weekend, of course, a Zoom, and the keynote speaker will be D.L. Hughley. The information, I'm asking that we put it on the Facebook page so people can get at there. There's a small fee, but the information is timeless.
Thank you so much. And this has been a great week and a great show. Thank you so much. One shout out to Troy Desmond Smith. Troy Desmond Smith is a person who helped teach me how to debate. And he also taught me in Seton Hall Upward Bound journalism for the first time. So big shout out to Big Brother. He's like only about 4 years older than me, so he was like he graduated from high school. He was a debater in science, and he graduated. Wow. He graduated the year I came in. So I came in, and he had already just graduated and was up at Bates, but came back to help and met him as when I was going to Seton Hall Upward Bound, and I learned a lot from this brother and brilliant brother. So shout out to Troy Smith. Very good seeing you, man. And so this is another week that we have on All Politics Are Local. So
one last shout out. Do it all, Kelly, right? Yesterday was his birthday. I gave him a silver mic for his birthday. All
right, cool. All right, so thank you so much. And that's another week on All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Thanks again. We're gonna have to have you back. And thank you for Dr. Henderson, Superintendent Roger Leon, and Mayor Raz Baraka for a wonderful evening.
Thank you.